We're still going to stay with our. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder to everyone, remember the decorum for the meeting. We talked about this yesterday morning and we're going to stay with the same decorum. We do have some catch up to do. We postponed, I believe, 4 items till this morning. But it's still my intention to adjourn at 3 o'clock. So hard work and staying on subject will get us there. I know we're still waiting for 1 or 2 people to show up, but we do have a quorum. Heather, do you need to take the roll?
I'd be happy to, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman. Senator Anderson,
Excused.
Senator Furphy. Here. Senator McEwen,
Excused.
Senator Pappas. Here. Representative Baker,
Here.
Representative Brown,
Excused.
Representative Burt,
Excused.
Representative Henderson.
Here.
Representative McGuire. Representative Obermueller,
Excused.
Representative O'Hearn. Here. Representative Stivar,
Excused.
Co-Chairman Landon,
Here.
Co-Chairman Burkhart.
Here. So,
Mr. Chairman, there were 8 presents.
thank you. And that's just barely a quorum. So everybody's here, stay here. Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you just maybe point out for the people who are listening in, the reason that people are not present is because we have conflicting committee meetings due to.
Sure, I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
So for those listening in on the virtual world, a number of our members are not here. One is at his own personal wedding. One has a family issue. One could not get off work. Most of you should remember that this is a volunteer legislature. A lot of people have jobs and his employer would not let him off. And I know Representative Obermueller has conflicting schedule. He's at Cap Fin in Cheyenne today. So when we finished up yesterday, he drove to Cheyenne, which all of us tend to do things like that. I believe Senator Anderson has a personal appointment this morning and will be in a little later. So that's some of the reasons. It's not that they don't want to be here. All of us tend to have conflicts at times and we'll work with that. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just to add to that, this, as we all know, was a rescheduled meeting. And normally we have an opportunity to get out in front and block those schedules a little bit. This one was a little more difficult to do that because of that special session that we had the first part of this month. So we do have a couple of members that frankly just had conflicts that they could not get out of it. So that's the deal. So, Mr. Chairman, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let's see, where are we at? Heather, if you would, I'm going to change the order on you a little bit. Let's talk about the radioactive material shipment first and give Senator Anderson a time to come in. And that, let me do a brief introduction on that. That bill was drafted at the request of the Office of Homeland Security. I'm not going to violate my own rule of statement by saying it's a committee bill. I would just like the committee to be aware of it. If the committee likes it and wants to run it as a committee bill, that's the committee's prerogative. Other than that, it'd probably end up being a personal bill. So, Ms. Jarvis, please.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the bill draft that I'm presenting is 22 LSO-0285, working draft 0.5. This bill draft, the catch title is radioactive materials transport fee. What it does in the title, it provides for a single emergency response fee for the transportation of radioactive materials, and it increases the fee and it specifies the proper deposit of the fee and strikes the duplicate fee and language. So almost the same exact language existed in statute in Title 31, which is the transportation statutes, and over in Title 37, which is where the Department of Homeland Security had it. So what this bill does is it puts the language relevant to the Department of Transportation in its statute location that already existed. And then it has the language that's relevant to the Department of Homeland Security in its part of the statute, and it specifies, or it clarifies that there's only one fee. Here, we're not saying that there's two of these material transports fees that are the exact same. It's one fee. So beginning in 31-18-407, so that's the title 31, which is some of the transportation titles. And so this is the emergency response fee and the radioactive materials transport permit, because that's one of the things that the Department of Transportation does as a part of this fee. So going on to page 2 in subsection A, this specifies, and there's a bunch of language that's stricken, and because it'll be clarified when we get to the Homeland Security statute. But so those first several lines are stricken, and it just begins with the Department of Transportation shall collect the emergency response fee that's assessed under 37-14-103A, which is trying to get these to cross-reference properly. So the Department of Transportation will collect the fee that's assessed by the Homeland Security when it issues a permit for each package of radioactive materials transported through this state. So that is trying to focus on what the YDOT does with respect to this fee. And then also existing languages that the department shall promulgate rules on the issuing and revoking of the permits, that aren't inconsistent with federal law. And then they shall also promulgate rules regarding the reporting. So that was existing law. They most likely already have those rules in existence. And then the last sentence was another one that was unclear between the two statutes, because this was, it's clarified now, just rather than going with what wasn't there. It's clarified now to specify that this fee shall be deposited as provided over in that Homeland Security statute. So now the Homeland Security statute at the bottom of page 2, which is 37-14-103, it begins to say, in addition to any other fees and taxes provided by law, because these radioactive transport folks are probably having a few things as they're transporting. So this it does not want to say that this is, supplanting any other fees, but there's an emergency response fee of $450. I'm on the top of page 3 now, because that's the increase that this bill does, because it was $200 and now it's $450, shall apply to each package of radioactive materials transported through the state. And then just to make sure that who's doing what is designated, the Department of Transportation shall collect this fee when it issues a permit under the title that we just read, 31-18-407A. And then this statute here in the middle of page 3 it strikes from existing language the stuff that the Department of Transportation does, which is the rule promulgation according to the permit, and it picks back up by saying that all emergency response fees collected by the Department of Transportation pursuant to this subsection, and here's where it's deposited. So it clarifies that it's going to be deposited in the separate account to be used for the payment of costs associated with training for and conducting emergency response procedures related to the transport of radioactive materials. That way this clarifies the one place to deposit the fee. There is one fee, and what's the amount of the fee. That's what this bill does.
Questions from the committee? Okay, I'll do a little bit further explanation also. The change in the fee amount from $200 to $450 is merely the difference in inflation between the time this was originally written and currently. A couple other changes, the Title 31 portion talked about radioactive waste shipments, where Title 37 talked about radioactive materials. Again, to clarify that, so there would be some confusion. You could ship fresh radioactive material through Wyoming without the fee, but if it was waste, then there was the fee. We will have radioactive materials coming through Wyoming in the future that are not waste. They are, let's call them new. And this fee I have checked is used to train first responders with the announcement that the advanced nuclear reactor will go in at the Naughton plant over in Kemmer. I think Kemmer is going to need a lot of help and training with how to handle those sorts of emergencies. So that is part of the reason to clarify statutes, to increase that fee and bring everything up to what is currently being done. If you're curious, so far this year, the state has collected about $92,000 on the existing fee. I think it's been as high as about 200,000. Not a lot of money, but it sure helps those local fire departments and EMS people respond to these sorts of emergencies. So any questions from the committee? Okay. Representative Furphy. I'm sorry, Senator Furphy. I guess you'll always be representative to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Director Reiner.
Holler is here too. Might have a perspective.
Yes, sir.
Director, do you have an emergency response team that is fully equipped to deal with radioactive material to protect those workers, et cetera?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Furphy, and for the record, Luke Reiner, Director YDOT. The Wyoming Department of Transportation does not have a response team. That would be the responsibility of the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security. And they really do that through their regional emergency response teams that are spread out throughout the state. But that would not be something that we consider our responsibility. Something happens there, we'll cordon off the area and keep people from going in and then call the emergency response team through WOS.
Follow up?
Well, Mr. Chairman, not so much a question for Director Reiner, but these funds are to be deposited into a separate account. So then is that account controlled by Homeland Security or the Department of Transportation?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Furphy, so that we collect the money and we transfer it then to the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security. They control the money. So we are simply we're a pass-through entity, and we're comfortable in that regard.
Questions? All right. Okay, no other questions, then I'll open it for public comment. Director, you're already there. Do you wish to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman, the only comment I would make is I think this bill is great. We support it, and certainly it increases the fees, I think, to an appropriate amount. And it's a realistic issue that we find on our roads, and I think we need to pay attention to what are on our roads, and this is a nice step towards doing that.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Director Reiner, the co-chairman just said this morning that we've collected something like $92,000 this year. When you consider that's a $200 fee, can you talk about what kind of traffic we've got out there? We apparently are transporting quite a bit of this radioactive material across our state, aren't we?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, I think we can do that math. I mean, is it a lot? I don't know. It's probably going to increase with the Kimmerer deal. But the reality is there is radioactive waste, among other issues, out on the roads.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Thank you, Director. Anyone else? Any other public comment? Colonel Haller, do you wish to speak on the issue? Nope. Okay. Any other public comment? With that, I'll close public comment. So committee, do you have any idea on this bill? It is not a committee bill. Like I said, I'm not going to violate my own rules and make it a committee bill. If the committee wishes to, that's your prerogative.
I frankly don't have a problem making it a committee bill.
I'm waiting for a motion then.
I move, so.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion? Well, go through the bill. Somebody might have a amendment. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Okay, no amendments. Representative Henderson. Question. Question having been called on 22 LSO 0285. Working draft 0.5. If you would take the roll, call the roll, please.
Senator Anderson,
Excused.
Senator
Wait,
Murphy,
one moment, please.
Heather, my apologies, but Senator Anderson wondered if we could leave a vote open for him. He should be here in a few minutes. But
Okay,
that's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
We can do that. He will be here, so we'll leave the vote open, but I won't leave it open beyond the meeting today. We are not going to do that. As an explanation, it's come up in the past where committee votes were left open for days. For us on this committee, it was decided early on that every vote closes at the end of the day. And if you don't vote, you're considered to be excused or absent, one of the two. So I'm sorry, Heather, if you would start over again.
Senator Murphy. Senator McEwen.
No.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Baker.
Aye.
Representative Baker,
Aye.
Representative Brown,
Excused,
Representative Burt,
excused.
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative McGuire.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller,
Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
yesterday, Representative Obermueller spoke with you and me and signed some votes since he was going to be away.
that's
And-
correct.
Should a vote have come, he anticipated if a vote were to come on this bill, he wanted to vote yes.
Okay, so that's an aye vote for, and again, as an explanation, well, I'll explain that. Go ahead, continue, Heather.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Excused.
Co-Chairman Burkhart,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Landon.
Aye.
An explanation on Representative Obermuller's proxy vote. Proxy votes are allowed on interim committees. That was a discussion that came up during the last general session. But again, the proxy vote has to be in writing and has to be signed by the individual leaving it, by the legislator who leaves it. So I just want to be clear on that, and his vote will be recorded as an aye vote. He had asked me about that last night. And again, that's a little unusual for the older members, more experienced members. We haven't done that in the past. However, it was determined during last session that that is appropriate unless we change our rules. So, okay, with that,
Mr. Chairman, would you like this to be a Senate file or a House bill?
Feels like we maybe have more House bills.
right, so started on the Senate side.
Make that a Senate file.
Senate. Okay, I know that Senator Anderson was extremely interested in the fuel tax bill. If it doesn't really mess up anybody's schedule, I think at this point we'll go to the highway safety discussion. Senator Murphy, are you ready for that? And Representative Baker, are you ready for that?
And Mr. Chairman, General or Director Reiner also has a presentation.
Okay. I was just wondering if the two people who were responsible for that topic were ready to go at this point with it. Representative Baker, you ready to go with that, your discussion?
I'm ready, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we have the topic of highway safety issues. And Director, Welcome again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, actually, you should have a slide PowerPoint presentation labeled Highway Safety in your binders. And we'll ask Melissa to bring this up. And so this is really a follow-up on discussions that we have had in the past, and maybe just because I think some questions might come up if I could ask Colonel Haller to come join me. See if we get less feedback on, is this mic working? Is there less feed? Can you hear me on this mic?
Yes, Director, that one is a lot better, actually.
Well, we're getting a lot of feedback on it.
Yes.
So this one, as really as we go to the first slide, you know, there's been a lot of really discussion about, hey, who are you partnering with on highway safety? And this first slide really just tees up, hey, who's on what committee? And really Colonel Haller's our lead on this highway safety issue. And you can see there that we have the Wyoming Seatbelt Coalition, and there's the members that are on it. And certainly that group meets regularly. And you have the Wyoming Governor's Council on Impaired Driving. And again, quite a laundry list of really influential, you know, departments around this state that work together on this impaired driving. And then we have the Wyoming Transportation Safety Coalition. And again, lots of people involved. So as we talk about highway safety, I'm actually, as I look at it from the director's level, pretty happy with the participation from around the state in that regard. Let me just see if Colonel Haller's got anything to add on that.
Good morning, committee. Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, John. Colonel, or I'm sorry.
good morning. Thank you for having me. Kevin Haller with the Highway Patrol. And the only thing that I would add to that is, as indicated on slide 1, this is a very cooperative effort between local law enforcement throughout the state, as well as associations, particularly WASCOP. But we also have a lot of other partners that are what I would say cross-discipline. So we do have a far reach throughout the state, and that goes not only from the Seatbelt Coalition, but also into the Governor's Council on Impaired Driving.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on then.
Continue.
The next slide, slide number 2. And this really is, this discussion is part of the rumor that there is a reduction in federal monies that we receive based on safety laws in the state. And you ask for some further detail regarding those laws, because the short answer is there is no reduction in the amount of federal money that we receive because of safety laws. However, there is a redirection of money that we receive based on safety laws. And so let me walk you through the details of what's involved in that discussion. But in the end, my recommendation to you will be, let's go on. It is, I think we're in a good place. The money is going to a good, is being used well. And I don't think that the laws that we'll discuss would be changed by the elected leaders in our state. But for you to determine, but in the end, my recommendation would be let's just leave it alone and be happy where we're at. So that's the kickoff. If you look at the top left of the screen, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, that is, we receive money in the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And actually, based on the rule set and the laws in place, we push some extra money actually to the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And you can see there the list of what we fund. So we fund intersection safety improvements, we widen the shoulders, we put in rumble strips, we And you can see the rest of the list, but it's all items that we do to keep the road safe and that we will need to continue to do. If you look over on the right-hand side, then there's impaired driving programs. And we push part of the money, the federal money is reallocated into those impaired driving programs. So what's an example of that? Colonel Haller and his crew go out and educate in our schools, and he's got a special team that does that, highly effective. We train motorcycle safety. We do overtime enforcement. And again, that's a trooper initiative where we put extra efforts onto the road. And sometimes we'll actually add in local police departments or sheriff's office to focus on an area. And I'll give you an example of that on the next slide. The other thing is that we would do data collection and reporting. For example, WASCOP produces an annual report on alcohol and crime in Wyoming. And we contributed about $40,000 of this money to that report. And so that report's out there. This year, they actually talked about 8,000 personnel who were arrested and detained, and off we go on that report. So that's the two areas where we would push money to. And if you're curious, well, how much money is actually involved here? So the matrix at the bottom talks you through how much money is involved. Now, this is a 10-year report. So it's fiscal years 12 to 21. And there's two laws, and we'll get into the laws here in a little bit. But the first law that affects the issue is the open container law. And the second law that affects it is the repeat intoxicated drivers law. And if you take a look at the total amount from each one of those rules that's affected is about $57 million over 10 years. And if you walk your way across the top, so an open container, there's $57.2 million that's reallocated over 10 years. And 53 million of that goes to HSIP, or the Highway Safety Improvement Program, and 4.1 goes to impaired driving program. And so then you can see the percentage of allocation between HSIP and impaired driving. Then you go down to the repeat intoxicated drivers. Again, $57 million affected over 10 years, and it all goes to HSIP, Highway Safety Improvement Program. The bottom number on the very bottom right of that chart is the total number of dollars that we received over those 10 years from the federal government. So 2.7 billion with a B. And so the percentage then of money that's reallocated based on our laws is 2.1%. Take that number by dividing, the 57.2 into 2705. So in the end, not a lot of percentage money as you're looking at the total, and it all goes to issues that we would use. So if you flip the page, there's an example of a DUI task force, and it was a 4-day operation up in Fremont County. I believe Colonel Haller and his crew like to do this, like to support it, because it's really an initiative led by the Fremont County law enforcement, and we happily participate and focus in for 4 days over Labor Day on keeping the road safe. And you can see there this last year what the results were in terms of total traffic stops and arrests. So I think nice use of that money in terms of keeping our roads safe. Next slide then. This then gets into probably a little bit of detail analysis of the specific laws that we talked about. So if you remember that first matrix talked about the two laws. The first one was repeat offender laws, or correction, the second one, the second one was repeat offender laws. And here's what the Wyoming statute says is is, hey, listen, and I'll just take the first line for an example, is we allow a 90-day reduction in post-conviction license suspension. And the federal requirement is a mandatory 1-year hard driver's license suspension. And so that's a difference in what the laws are. And the last time that the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, NHTSA, looked at this, which was 2011, they said, hey, our requirement is this, you don't meet it. And here's what's in your law. You can scan down that right-hand side then of the column, and you can look at some of the other issues there. For example, you go down to the white section, the first white section, the federal requirement is that if you have a limited reinstatement period, that driving is restricted only to ignition interlock vehicles and to get back and forth to work. And the Wyoming statute says is that the exception is for operating an employee's vehicle during normal business activities, and you don't have to use an ignition interlock, and that there's no location driving restriction. So that's an example of the differences between the federal requirements to meet the mandate and the Wyoming statutes. And I think if you have some real specific questions on the statutes, Colonel Haller may be able to answer them, and or Mr. Rossetti if we need to. But that's an example then of the repeat offender laws and the differences. If you flip the page, you get to the open container laws, which was the other item on the matrix why money is reallocated. So NHTSA did a formal review of Wyoming statutes in 2008 was the last time they did it. And let's just take the first line. So the federal requirement is that you have an open container if your vehicle is located in the public right of way. And in Wyoming says, hey, you got to be in motion on the public highway. All right, key difference there, but key enough that the federal government makes us reallocate money. And then you go down to the second sort of line, which is the open container definition. And Wyoming allows you to, put the cork back into your bottle of wine and move out down the road. And the federal requirement says, no, that's an open container. And so those are example of the differences. And again, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, our recommendation after looking at this, knowing that there's really no total change in total funding and that the money gets pushed to an appropriate spot, our recommendation is we're in a good place and the status quo is okay with us. Mr. Chairman, that's a quick summary and report back on those two differences in laws that you have.
Let's go, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a question for you, Colonel. I've been asked by several constituents why in the world it counts as a DUI if you get somebody in the back seat with a beverage when you're the designated driver. And I'm assuming, but I'm going to ask you this morning, I'm assuming this federal influence has something to do with that back when we passed that law, which has been in effect for quite a while now. Can you help me with that one? Because I get asked that all the time.
Colonel?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I understand your question correctly, a passenger in the vehicle and not the driver would be charged with a DUI. And that is not the case. Only the operator, the person that's in physical control of the vehicle, would be charged with driving while under the influence. Now, there may be some confusion because if there is something as an open container in the vehicle and it's that particular passenger, they could be charged with a crime, but it would not be a DUI. In addition, if they're underage, it could be minor in possession. So there could be a charge, but it would be separate. It would be different than a DUI.
So I'll follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Colonel, thank you for that. But yeah, I definitely knew that the violation would be for the driver. a lot of confusion and misunderstanding or even concern over why in the world do we not allow beverage in the back seat somewhere when somebody just riding down the road, maybe going to a Cowboy football game. Is that federal influence? Is
Sounds
that
like a personal issue.
is that being driven in part by the fact that the feds require that? Or is that just a law that we passed?
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, that's dating back for several decades now. As far as a vehicle and an occupant having an open container in the vehicle is not allowed. Now, there are exceptions to that. For example, if it is a motor home, then they are an exception to that motor vehicle rule where passengers in that living space can have an open container, but not in the immediate driving area. When we're talking about passenger cars, it's just not allowed. It is considered an open container.
So one final follow-up.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you,
please.
Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry to draw this out, but so Colonel, I assume that our troopers probably like that law because you can pass a bottle back and forth or a can of whatever back and forth. Is that really the issue there? Or if we've done such a good job, I think, of trying to have designated drivers. I'm just curious on this front. So,
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, I think to a large extent, your perception is accurate. Whenever we're talking about a passenger vehicle, the driver can pretty much have access to something being handed to them. So yeah, I would say it's an immediate access concern.
thank you.
Other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no
Director.
other questions, if I could add one other comment, which is really not here in this briefing and but having to do with highway safety and DUIs. Last session, we actually did a considerable amount of work, not with this committee, but with the legal committee on trying to clean up the DUI laws of this state. Because there are some laws on the books and there's laws not being enforced across our state that put a very negative effect on our safety on the roads relative to enforcement of DUIs. And I would respectively ask this committee at the appropriate time, and I know it's not this year, but I do think for highway safety reasons, we need to pop that DUI section back open again and work to fix it because there are some significant issues that have a very negative effect on Colonel Haller and his troopers in terms of enforcing the laws today.
Okay.
Sounds like an interim topic to me.
Okay, Heather, would you make a note of that for a potential interim topic to review the DUI statutes and fix some of those loopholes and
Yes, Mr.
things
Chairman.
there? Thank you.
And that backseat passenger thing I was talking about.
You don't have to sit in the back seat.
I'm just
Yes, and the backseat passenger thing, and I think we probably need to just, again, as an interim topic, look at all of those. Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that this is related to safety, and I see you have rumble strips in there, Director. But with the vast volume of, the truck traffic coming across our state, what's your assessment, if you will, on the number of incidents of drivers that are found to be driving fatigued and perhaps not able to maintain a lane?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, a couple of things. One is we know rumble strip saves lives because, and that's one of the things Colonel Haller tracks. In terms of how many people are driving fatigue, let me see if Colonel Haller can help on that.
Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, so
I don't think you're on. There you go.
that color blindness is kicking in. Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson. So I believe it was about 2 to 3 years ago, the YDOT Commission asked a similar question, and we began to track that. as far as where our fatalities were occurring, the location, and whether or not there were rumble strips present on that particular roadway section. And to date, what we've seen, it's about 50-50. However, as Director Reiner indicated, I believe that we can all agree that at some point in time, those rumble strips have directed us back over into the driving lane. And so I believe they are highly effective. There's something called the 3 E's whenever we look at highway safety, and that's education, enforcement, and engineering. And this is where those rumble strips come into play with the engineering. It's very difficult to prove an unknown or prevent or what you are preventing. But I am very convinced that rumble strips are preventing crashes and therefore injuries and fatalities on our roadways.
Other questions for the director? Okay. Director Colonel, just stay there a minute. You're here, so, and you know how tactful and diplomatic I can be. A question in all seriousness, based on both of your experience in that and in the discussion we've had, what things really would work to move the needle on this? We keep having approximately the same number of fatalities on our roads every year. Recently, there was a national organization rated Wyoming's highways as 12th best in the nation and said they would be an awful lot better except our fatalities and our highway safety issues. I mean, we have a lot of long distances, a lot of boredom, and that. What, in your opinion, what would really move the needle? What do you need to make an impact to say, hey, next year, year after that, we're going to be under 100, and pretty soon we're going to be under 50 a year?
Mr. Chairman,
Director,
maybe
Colonel?
I'll start and then we'll push it to Colonel Haller. I really 3 recommendations right off the top of my head. 1 is mandatory seatbelt law.
Okay,
2 is better laws for distracted driving. And 3 is compensation package for troopers,
okay.
because we just don't have enough bodies on the road to control speed.
Okay, Colonel?
Mr. Chairman, great question. I agree with the director. Seatbelts would be number 1. Number 2 would be distracted driving, just because, again, it's accessible to everybody. And then the third one, the director already hit on, and that's some of our DUI laws need to be brought up to speed.
Okay. Thank you both. Appreciate the frankness. Committee, okay. So, see, I think probably in order to stay with the safety discussion, I'll go to Representative Baker. I think you had some discussion points and that. Are you ready, Representative?
I'm ready, Mr. Chairman. So my intention is, if you can hear me, okay.
Could you turn up your volume a little bit or get closer to your microphone?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll put in my headphones. Hopefully that'll work.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
223.
Can you hear me okay now?
A little better, but go ahead. No, it's not so good.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just speak really loudly. So my intention is I've got a couple of videos that I just want to show you, a couple of short videos, and then just a couple of quick discussion points. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully this works out, if you'll bear with me.
Representative, you still working on that?
Yeah, is it not working?
Okay,
Did it not share the screen?
no, we see you.
Okay, there we go. I don't know why it didn't. Okay,
There you go. You're up now.
okay, sorry about that. Here we go. Sorry. Here's the second video. Sorry, having technical difficulties here. I'm not sure how to get out of this here. How do I get out of the share screen?
Heather, can you help him out with that?
Yeah, can you help me with that? Oh, so, okay, there we go. Stop share. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. So I appreciate everybody's indulgence. I just wanted to share those couple videos. The first one was from my sheriff. He supplied that video. That was in a fixed 80-mile-per-hour zone during an investigation on another accident. So as we heard both the director and the colonel discuss some of the issues related to highway safety, I want to just kind of build on that because I really believe that trooper compensation is a big thing. I think that I don't know if the committee is aware, but I had a ride along with Lieutenant Russell in Rock Springs in the division here, and it was very eye-opening. One of the things that he shared with me is that you can't take pride to the grocery store. They're losing troopers to other agencies, and that is the state legislature's issue, I think, because in WYDOT, what we have is the commission spends about 80% of the money, and the legislature controls and spends about 20% of the money. And we're responsible for trooper pay. So that's one thing that we can do. Trooper pay in WYDOT is the highest rate, and they're compensated at the highest rate in all of WYDOT. So we, as the legislature, I think it's our responsibility to take that tent top, and raise it up so that we can bring all of WYDOT up. I think that trooper compensation is a big thing for safety. We heard about the 3 E's, the education, enforcement, and engineering. I think the enforcement is very difficult. When we have issues with a 15% workforce and we don't have 15% of our workforce there. We're going into a busy season in the winter and we don't have the troopers and unfortunately, they're forced to go out on these roads when there's an accident, because if they don't do it, who's going to do it? So we have this forced overtime, which then messes up the schedule later on in the week and then makes them more tired. So again, it's just a compounding issue where I think trooper compensation is something that the legislature could do to start to address the safety in our communities. The other thing, as you're aware, is I'm a big proponent of alternate routes and the ability of communities and people in those communities to not get on the interstate, to avoid that traffic. So what I'd like to see is just for future discussion, I included the bill draft from last year that I sponsored, which was an 80-mile-per-hour safe speeds bill. And what it did is it just required WYDOT to install electronic variable speed limit signs anywhere they've designated 80-mile-per-hour speed limit. So in that video that you saw, that was a static 80-mile-per-hour, fixed 80-mile-per-hour speed. And what we have is these truckers, if they see an 80-mile-per-hour speed limit, they're going to go 80. So we need to slow these people down. We need to slow the truckers down. And then again, in communicating with the communities when the roads are closed, I think it's another big thing in highway safety. Those people that live in Evanston, Rock Springs, Rawlins, Laramie, Cheyenne, they experience this influx of truck traffic that then clogs up their streets and makes it unsafe for the local traveling traffic. So I think there's a lot here. I appreciate your indulgence. I do think that there's some things that we can do when we talk about education and even engineering, the engineering part being an alternate route. For those of you that aren't aware, the city of Green River is seeking to improve Flaming Gorge Way. Something that's unique about Sweetwater County is the tunnels. They cause a lot of, I guess, unforeseen incidences where you have oversized loads that can't go through the tunnels that are then forced to divert through the city of Green River. Okay, so I appreciate the director. He came out over the summer, took a look at the issue. I think that's one of the things that we can do, improve the infrastructure that's already there. And then again, as many of you are aware, the only road between Rock Springs and Green River is the busiest road in the state that's paved is the interstate. You can take an alternate route from Rock Springs all the way to Point of Rocks and from Green River all the way to Little America, but there's nothing in between. So we're forced to be on this road. So it just brings me to my last point, which is, the troopers are out doing their best to enforce. And just recently, the troopers were in performing an operation on the busiest road in the state, which is a great place to perform, a sting operation, right? Well, one of the people that they pulled over had 80 pounds of marijuana. They decided that they were going to flee. Okay, in between the two communities, Rock Springs and Green River, troopers had to deploy spike strips. The spike strips didn't really slow down the vehicle. Then the vehicle ended up crashing into another vehicle, rear-ending a commercial vehicle and killing that driver. Okay, so that's really one of my concerns is if we're going to have, enforcement, then we need to look at the issues associated with enforcing, these laws. So again, thank you for your indulgence and sorry about the technical difficulties. And I apologize I couldn't be there in person.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Representative. So I think, Heather, if you would make another note, I think we have another potential interim topic on this one. I think it's too late in this interim to address a lot of these issues, but potentially present it as an interim topic next interim.
Mr. Chairman, would you be thinking of that as a highway safety interim topic that addresses things from compensation for troopers, variable speed limits, and other safety matters?
And the three matters that the director and the colonel presented, primary seatbelt, while distracted driving,
Okay.
the other one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you saw in that video, distracted driving was mentioned in the sheriff's video as one of the main causes. So I think that there is something there that we can look at.
So, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to salute the representative. Very well done this morning. Appreciate your passion. Understand what you're up against over there in Green River and Rock Springs. That's a tough one. And that's going to take, I think, a lot of interagency help and some coalitions to get some things done over there. But in the meantime, committee, I couldn't agree more with the representative from the state trooper standpoint. I'll never forget during the session last year, I drove home, it was crowding midnight, and I probably shouldn't have been out there. All of us have probably been in situations like that where we shouldn't have. And there was a wreck near Douglas, and one of our state troopers was down in the borrow pit, tending to somebody who had run off the road. And fortunately, there weren't any fatalities, but that trooper was out there at 11:30 at night, and it was snowing and blowing, cold. And I just thought to myself, these state troopers should be the highest paid law enforcement officers in our state, and they're not. So just food for thought, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Colonel Haller, could you come back up the table for just a moment, please? I don't want to belabor, Colonel, I don't want to belabor the point, but I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss your manpower situation along Interstate 80, if you could, please. We've had this discussion, the two of us, but I'd like the rest of the committee to hear some of that discussion.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Again, Kevin Haller with the Highway Patrol. So we are struggling throughout the state with manpower. And the manpower affects having troopers for the shifts. So we have coverage out there to respond to calls for service such as crashes, excuse me. But it's not just response to crashes. It's also proactive enforcement, meaning you're out there and you're identifying violators of traffic violations. So speeding, not staying in the proper lane of travel, which typically means DUI enforcement. But at the end of the day, when a trooper is supposed to have done his or her shift, they're also being called out, again, because we don't have the staffing available in each of those divisions throughout the state. And a division is typically a county, is the easiest way to look at it. Sometimes they cross over a little bit. But you get some of these divisions where they're
Colonel,
over.
could you get a little closer to the microphone, please? Thank
bet.
you.
Is that better?
Yes.
We get these divisions where they oftentimes are over 100 miles. And we have troopers that are out there and they're the only one in their division. So manpower shortages are a real problem. And as Representative Baker indicated, they are a compounding problem because they build up, and troopers are on edge right now because they have been gearing up for what is yet to come, severe snowstorms. And so you can feel it ripple throughout the agency whenever we have a big storm coming, and they're checking their gear, they're getting everything ready because they will be out there for 24 hours. And it is a very lonely circumstance when you know what you're going to be faced with, and you also know there's no other help coming, and it's daunting. And so on top of that, violence continues to increase in our state. And I'm saddened to say our state is changing, or better said, our state has changed. Here recently, we had a trooper that was performing a traffic stop around midnight north of Cheyenne on I-25, again, another major corridor, and a pursuit ensued. Pursuits are not uncommon these days. There's typically one somewhere in the state every day. And so on this particular occasion, the trooper had troopers behind him in Cheyenne, but they were out of position. So he radioed ahead to Platte County Sheriff's Office. And Platte County, we work very well with all local entities throughout the state. They set up spike strips, which deflate tires and aid in getting that vehicle safely stopped. The vehicle did stop. And whenever that suspect came out at a sudden stop and the trooper is still rolling in behind him, a 223, an AR-15 began, he could see the muzzle flash, and that driver was shooting at him at a rapid fire. And so he's taking hits as he's coming in and getting stopped. He responds with fire back at the driver right through his windshield because he cannot get out of his vehicle. And it's just the two of them out there on a very dark night. And so ultimately, to come to a conclusion, no one was hit. It was the grace of God. And having said that, troopers and sheriff's deputies showed up about 30 minutes later, and we were able to take him into custody. But that's what I mean with the circumstances of our state has changed. The violence on our law enforcement officers is increasing. Troopers are seeing it, municipality officers are seeing it, and sheriff's deputies are seeing it every day somewhere throughout our state. So there's a lot of factors here. So when we talk about compensation, that is one factor, and it's an important one. But yesterday, I talked a little bit about our numbers that are coming in the front door on the recruiting side. They're getting lower and lower. And the reason for that is it is a complex issue. Pay is one, sure, but it is those truly interested in getting into law enforcement for the right reasons. And we are seeing those numbers decline. People are not getting in because even though Wyoming is a very appealing, I would say the #1 state in the nation that appeals and supports law enforcement officers, and I am proud of that. But nonetheless, we too are confronted with this dilemma. So we are trying to think outside the box. We are recruiting from other states that have mandatory mask and vaccination mandates. And so we are giving it our all, but nonetheless, we are still confronted with law enforcement is not the most attractive profession to get into. And then you dig a little deeper and you start looking at how competitive it is. And in our case, for troopers, we are struggling from many facets to recruit high caliber individuals. And Mr. Chairman, I could not agree more that state troopers are the best trained officers in our state, and as a result should be adequately compensated.
Mr. Chairman, could I add one more comment?
In just a moment, if you could wait a moment, please, Representative. Colonel, you and I have had a discussion, and when the troopers are in a standby status for call out, they get compensated for that. Would you tell the committee what that compensation is?
Yes, sir. This goes back to our state of Wyoming personnel rules. And so the call out for the trooper to be, or any employee, state employee to be on standby, which means it is altering their lifestyle to some degree because they have to respond if called. So no alcoholic beverages, can't be a certain distance away from home. But that compensation for that call out status is $1 per hour.
Did you, Mr. Co-Chair, I thought that would get a response.
Did you say $1 an hour?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Pre-tax.
Committee, we've got work to do.
Yes.
We've got work to do, Mr.
Colonel, and if you would, Director, please come up, but I'm going to go to Representative Baker. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add a little bit more about the implications of the trooper shortage, because we've all been on busy roads. And recently, last year, I was on the Three Sisters during an extreme storm. And what I saw is that there were 1 or 2 troopers out there, but because there were only 1 or 2 troopers available, it looked like the sheriff's department have their full force out there. And then you had sheriffs with shovels out there digging out semis. So again, that's what happens is that it's just a compounding issue. When the troopers are shorthanded, it affects law enforcement at the local level also. So again, I'm supportive of doing something.
Thank you. Director, I know you'd like to comment also, so please, I know we've digressed a little bit, but I think this is a very important subject for us to consider.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity. I would thank Representative Baker for his discussion and videos, and would completely concur with the discussion that we've had on troopers. Putting a whiteout all hat on. I do think it's a team approach to highway safety. And while I would certainly completely concur with the discussion on troopers and the number of troopers and trooper pay, it's also, I think, relevant to this discussion and to this committee to talk about the other men and women that man the road.
Please.
And that's our maintainers. And we have the same issue. We are significantly down in snowplow drivers. And so even the ability to go or to dig out or to clear the road we're hampered today. And it negatively impacts highway safety. And again, it goes back to the compensation issue of us not really being able to satisfactorily perform that mission. We're in a cross-leveling situation now where anybody that has or had a CDL, even if you aren't assigned to that mission, we're now putting you on the road. And so that's where we're at operationally, specifically on I-80 and specifically west. So the Three Sisters that Representative Baker talked about, that's affected. Evanston, Lyman, it's been hard for us to recruit maintainers. It's just like it is troopers. And so I think it is a broader discussion, and would just wanted to make those comments. I would also say that we completely agree with the representative in terms of variable speed limits. We know they save lives. I think I've told you before, we do have a moratorium that I put on no more, because we don't have the money to maintain them, and we don't have the money to hire employees to go out and take care of them. So about $100,000 each sign, because there's a bunch of stuff that comes with it in terms of being able to sense what's going on. It's just not slapping a sign out there. It's got to be right. And that takes some work, and they have to be maintained. And so as time goes and resources change, we hope to address that. But again, I think that's a study for next year. Mr. Chairman, I probably said enough there.
Thank you, Director. And so I think direction to staff, Heather, I think all of this can be combined into one major interim topic. We really do need to look at these issues. And I was, I knew there'd be a question on that standby pay, and Director, you and I have had a discussion where at one time, everybody wanted to, all your people, everybody wanted to be on I-80. Now nobody wants to be on I-80. So with that then, thank you. And Representative Senator Furphy. I wish representatives wouldn't do this. It confuses the daylights out of me when they become senators. So
Well,
if you had, this was one of our interim topics, was aquifer protection. And thank you for the memo and the note. And if you would go ahead and discuss it, you can stay there if you want, or go to the table, whichever you prefer.
I'll stay here, Mr. Chairman, if that
Continue.
works. I'm going to be very brief.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. But yes, aquifer protection for our community is an extremely important issue. And it also relates to speeds on the interstate, particularly when it's icy. And so Director Reiner was very cooperative with me about addressing this issue. And it goes back, as you can see in the memo I put together, back over 10 years ago. YDOT participated with Albany County and the city of Laramie in an initial study on I-80 and the Telephone Canyon, coming down the canyon westbound. Our aquifer is very near the surface at that point. And so the risk being, if, for example, as I used in here, a diesel truck spills and the contents flow off the road, it could contaminate our aquifer. And then Laramie would be in a big mess. The whole state of Wyoming would be in a mess trying to provide water to Laramie. So that was the issue. So in the initial study, it was found, yes, the aquifer is very near the surface. So YDOT immediately initiated some measures, and you can see what they did was, first of all, put a Nova chip surface over the existing concrete to make it less hazardous and ice, etc. So as these semis come down the interstate, they did another very important issue. reducing the speed coming down, and a lot of you have seen it, 65 miles an hour from the summit into Laramie, basically 65 miles an hour, which is very important. And of course, they put up new signs regarding that, and they help fund monitoring wells. So if our aquifer gets contaminated, we're going to know right away if we have an issue. They worked with our county on several issues, including looking at putting detention material to collect if something happened. Unfortunately, our city and county ran into funding issues and they couldn't participate with WIDOT. But it's going on and continuing. As of March of this year, we're funding a study to more closely track the aquifer and put in, once again, proposed wells in the right of way that could easily detect if there's a spill or anything happened to our aquifer. And as I noted at the end, I really want to thank Director Reiner and WIDOT for working with our community. I feel much better now knowing what we're doing, and I think we've got a pretty good plan in place to protect it, and I think WIDOT's aware of the issue, and they're going to continue to work with us to make sure our aquifer is safe. So that's it, Mr. Chairman. I'll answer any questions.
Sorry, questions for the senator? So Senator, I do have one then. So you do mention diesel fuel, but you are concerned with other hazardous materials being spilled, correct?
Correct.
So, okay, because I know that here a while ago, there was a tank truck spilled, dumped its cargo into a river. And it was considered a hazardous waste or a hazardous material event, and their cargo was tomato ketchup. Now, that might sound funny, but it's acidic and killed quite a few fish and became a very large cleanup operation. So just.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just used the diesel truck as an example, but any of that hazardous material that could flow into our aquifer would be a real problem. I mean, of course, radioactive material that would be liquid in nature of any sort. So, yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you. At this point, any public comment on the discussion of safety issues, any of the issues we've discussed? Come on up, please, Richard. You're not on yet. There you are.
Red and green Christmas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll be very brief. My former gig,
If you would identify yourself.
Richard Garrett,
Okay,
and I'm a citizen presenting to you today as a citizen. In my former gig, though, I had the chance to understand a little bit about the hazards that wildlife present to our state's drivers as well. And as the committee probably knows, there are over 6,000 wildlife car strikes annually in the state of Wyoming, and each costs on average about $10,000. The state is doing great work on wildlife crossings in public-private partnerships. And in fact, the state is preparing to construct one, I believe, in the vicinity of KC, Wyoming very soon. I would urge the committee to include wildlife crossings as part of your discussion about wildlife safety, or I'm sorry, about highway safety, and think about ways that some of the federal money that is becoming available for infrastructure can be used to offset and mitigate some of those collisions. And that's all I'd like to add to the discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Richard, very much.
Thank you too.
Glad that in with discussion. Any other public comment on safety issues? All right, with that, I'll close public comment. With that, Heather, we'll go back then to that one bill. We need to consider the fuel tax bill. If you would, please. If we, are accommodating Senator Anderson, who I know wanted to be here for that discussion.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're back in the topic that was the final topic or one of the final ones yesterday, and this is the fuel tax bill.
Correct.
22 LSO-0032, working draft 0.4. And so this is a bill to increase fuel taxes and to amend the distributions of the fuel tax revenues. And starting on page 1, it's going to indicate that there are going to be changes in the several sections of the fuel tax. And just to orient you, so Title 39 are the tax section of the tax title in Wyoming statutes. And 39, chapter 17 of those is the fuel taxes. In Wyoming's fuel tax statutes, there are 3 sections. The first one refers to basically gasoline. And so you'll notice that the article, the 100s in the 3917 100s, those are the gasoline tax. The 3917 200s are the diesel tax, and the 3917 300s are the alternative fuels. And so all of those you'll find are listed on page 1 as far as the sections that are being amended in this bill draft. So going on to page 2. The first amendment is in 39-17-104. So again, that's the gasoline tax. And I'm orienting you this way because you're going to see a lot of repetition in the same words in each section of the statutes. So this bill draft, and I believe that it is the chairman's intent. So I'm going to tell you some amounts. But I believe that these amounts are going to be 5 cents in each year. But I believe that the chairman has already directed that it ought to be 2 cents per year. So
Heather, let me interrupt you at this point. Just some preliminary. We discussed this bill at the last meeting and tabled it for consideration at this meeting. In looking over this bill since then and talking to a number of people, this bill is still a draft. It hasn't been introduced or anything yet. We can kind of do what we want to with it. It would be my intention that the amount of fuel tax be reduced to 2 cents from the 5 cents per year for 3 years to 2 cents per year over 3 years. A lot of reasoning for that. While I think 5 cents is a more realistic number that is needed, I'll be blunt about this. I think 2 cents over 3 years is an easier number to potentially pass in both chambers. We have to start figuring out a way to fund our highways better than we have, and that's it. So what Heather is getting at is that the rates for the distribution for snowmobiles and boats and that will change. So it's my intention that it be 2, 2, and 2, and that the other sections be changed to conform to that amount. So I just wanted to set that up for the committee so you can understand what we're doing. So Heather, with that, go ahead and please proceed.
Okay, so the mechanism describing the change, it's going to say that, so for the period beginning July 1, 2022, I'm right at the top of page 2, and ending June 30th, 2023. So for the first year, the increase would be, or the amount of the total tax on gasoline shall be 26 cents per gallon. What you are reading in front of you will say 29, but I'm just trying to read in as we go what the 2 cents would be rather than 5 cents. So it'd be 26 per gallon. For the period beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024. So for the next year, the amount of the fuel of gasoline tax would be 28 cents per gallon. And thereafter, 30 cents per gallon. That would be a 2, 2, and 2 over 3 years. Then just the way that these statutes are organized, this paragraph 1 basically repeats that. The numbers are 25 cents, 27 cents, and 29 cents, but that's because that paragraph A had incorporated a 1 cent that is included. So this taxation rate for gasoline would be the 2, 2, and 2, according to this bill, 26 cents, 28 cents, and 30 cents. And then the next portion in that is amended in this gasoline section is the distribution where that money would go. And in the distribution section, subsection C, which is at the beginning of page 3, is that so this says that the department shall credit to the appropriate accounts based on the deductions from the taxes collected under this article in the following order. And what this goes the amended section is going to say that there are some amounts, and those are the calculations that I have not yet done, because you'll see that they're going to be given for snowmobiles. Let me back up. The fuel taxes, the gasoline taxes, they need to account in some way for snowmobiles and and vehicles that are on the road or on different pathways. And so then money goes from the fuel tax to whatever their program is. And so there is a snowmobile program for snowmobile trails. And so this is the amended section is going to describe that, for the period of the first year, there's a certain amount from all the fuel tax that would go to the snowmobiles. And those amounts, rather than being what you see here, $35 for the first year, $41.25 for the second year, and $47.50 for the third year, those would be reduced just a bit, but I need to consult the matrix that I have to see what those actual amounts were. But there's some amount less than what you see there that would go to the snowmobile programs. And then on page 4, this is the motorboat program. Again, they're not the roads. And so this is some money taken out from the gas that is spent on the motorboats to go to motorboat programs. And you'll see that there are some calculations, some amounts, $35, $41.25, and $47.50, which will be reduced because those are each at if the increase were 5 cents. Then on page 5, they are the same situation with the off-road recreational vehicles. They're off the road, so they have a separate program that would pay for them. So some that comes from the fuel tax is directed towards them. And so those amounts that you see, the $22.40 for the first year, the $26.40 for the second year, and the $30.40 would each be reduced correspondingly. Then finally, still in this distribution statute, that's saying after crediting the amounts that are provided in that subsection C, all of those were the motorboat, the off-road vehicle, and the snowmobile section, then the balance that's designated from the amounts that's attributable to the 2 cent per gallon of the taxes collected for each of the periods shall be deposited into the state highway fund. And I'm just reading forward on to at the top of page 6. So you'll see that both the bottom of page 5 and the top of page 6, those have the 5, 10, 15 cents. It'd be 2, 4, and 6 cents. Would the amount attributable to that increase shall be deposited. And that is a part of this bill that this bill specifies that it is to be expended on highway construction, repair, or maintenance, and not for administration or operating expenses. So this fuel tax increase of the 6 cents, ultimately, the 2 cents each year, would be designated specifically for the highway construction, repair, or maintenance, and not for administration or operating expenses. That's at the top of page 6. Midway through page 6 is now we're in statute 39-17-204. So we're going to see very similar things to what we just looked at, but we're in the diesel fuel section of the statutes. So in subsection A is the taxation rate, explaining that it's going to go up by what will be 2 cents, 4 cents, 6 cents, rather than 555. And then So, and then on page 7 is the distribution statute. Now, this is not the same instance where that we will call out an amount for motorboats and for snowmobiles and for off-road vehicles. And I think presumably because those typically are gasoline. And so there's not a section in the diesel to pull money out from the increase to go towards those programs. So the distribution in subsection D just indicates that the amount attributable to the 2 cent per gallon increase, and here's the language of shall be expended on highway construction. I'm on line 18 on page 7, shall be expended on highway construction, repair or maintenance, and not for administration or operating expenses. So then at the bottom and very bottom of page 7, you'll see is 39-17-304, which is the taxation rate. We've moved into Article 3, which is the alternative fuels. So at the top of page 8, you'll see the actual increase in the mirrors from the gasoline and from the diesel of the 2 cents, 2 cents, 2 cents. Again, although what you see in front of you, the numbers are 5 cents, 5 cents, 5 cents. I need to adjust the number. And then on page 9, the distribution, and also this doesn't necessarily account for the idea that there would be distribution or alternative fuels for those other programs, the snowmobiles and things. So there's just the one distribution that indicates that for the amounts attributable to this particular increase, they shall go to the highway fund to be spent on highway construction, repair or maintenance, and not for administration or operating expenses. And so that is the same language that you saw repeated through each of the different sections of the fuel tax statutes.
Right. Questions for staff? Representative, or I'm sorry, Senator McEwen.
I just have one quick question. Mr. Chairman,
Please.
how much of the fuel tax actually goes to support school districts right now? Do you have an idea what the dollar figure is or the percentage? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Heather?
Senator McEwen, by the Constitution, the Wyoming Constitution, the amounts that are levied for vehicle registrations and licenses and fuel taxes are to go to the highway fund. And so they are designated to transportation purposes. I don't want to speak definitively that is for certain everything that's done, but that is pretty well guarded that those things, because constitutionally, anything that is levied for those particular purposes is supposed to go to care administration, for highway purposes, basically. So I don't think any, or at least it shouldn't, there shouldn't be any considerable amount is the answer to your question.
So,
Mr. Co-Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And Senator, that's a good question because when you go and buy your license tax, some of that money does go to education and it goes to the colleges and it also goes to the school districts, some of that. But all of the gasoline tax, to my knowledge, goes to the roads. So.
Heather?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, to clarify, the state register, you're right, the state registration goes all towards to highways. Some of the county registration does go towards schools, but that's county and licenses, but fuel tax, absolutely. You're right, fuel tax directly to the highway fund.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Thank you, Heather. So public comment on 22 LSO 0032 fuel tax with those changes
That are anticipated.
that are anticipated. Yes. Well, we can do whatever we want. We haven't moved it or anything yet. So, okay.
I do have a question.
Representative Henderson, for who?
Well, for Heather, I think. I'm sorry, Heather. You can answer there. Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious, do we have to change all of these at the same time? Or is it possible for the legislature to only make a change in one of them, for example, the alternative fuels?
Ms. Jarvis?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Henderson, the changes that you would choose to make would be your prerogative. I believe that historically, that they have typically been changed in concert with one another.
Representative, I'd add also that all these changes, changing just the fuel tax looks simple, but we have all the other changes for off-road vehicles, snowmobiles, because they do use fuel. And it's appropriate that they are off-road so that they get some of that money returned to them for trails maintenance, for winter maintenance on the snowmobile trails, for boat docks. And so I think that's appropriate. And we've always done it that way. We've always included all of those fuel tax distributions and where they go. Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I apologize for not asking this earlier. Heather, and I apologize for having to step out for a moment. Did you outline where this money is directed? Is it directed to the account that we set up in 2012-13, which sets that money apart? I think I heard you say that. I was just wanting to confirm that.
Ms. Jarvis?
Mr. Chairman, the amount that is attributable to the increase is directed if you look, I'm trying to find, so if you look at the bottom of, starting at the bottom of page 5 in subsection D, you'll see that after crediting to the amounts that, basically the motorboat and the snowmobiles amounts, that this increase of each of the 2% or the 2 cents per year. Now I'm at the top of page 6. It shall only be, so there's a limit on the expenditure in the amended language. So it shall only to be expended on highway construction, repair, or maintenance, and not for administration or operating expenses. So that's in this particular bill. But then if you carry on, because we're actually in subsection D, the introduction paragraph to subsection D, because it shall be deposited or it shall deposit the balance of taxes collected under this article. So that would include this amount into accounts within the state highway fund created under this subsection. And so there are actually some paragraphs listed under subsection D. So if that's where the accounts that you're describing are, then yes, it would go to those accounts, but I'm not entirely sure which accounts you're describing. But even if it goes into those accounts, and even if those accounts allow for other expenditures, this particular set of 2, 4, 6 cents would only be able to be expended from whichever of those accounts on highway construction, repair, or maintenance, and not for administration.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up. Heather, thank you. I appreciate that. And that is exactly how we set up the previous account. It was limited committee to only be used on the highways and with construction, et cetera. And to this day, to my knowledge, you can go in and see what that additional 10 cents has benefited the state. So thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to make sure as we present this bill going forward, if it goes forward, that's important, I think, for us to outline that to our colleagues, that it's not that it's going to just go into the general fund of the highway department. It is specifically to be used on the roads. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, with that, public comment. Is there any public comment on draft? Ms. Legursky. You better be quick because I will close public comment.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be extremely quick.
No, not with this, but with identifying yourself as wanting to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Katie Legursky with Associated General Contractors. We are in support of increasing the fuel tax mainly for the reasons that I talked about yesterday regarding the change in distribution for the severance tax. We are very supportive of it. We know the condition of our highways that are continuing to deteriorate. Any increase on the amount of money that we could put directly on the roads is a huge benefit to our transportation system throughout the state of Wyoming. And with that, I stand for any questions.
Questions from Ms. Legursky? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is, I'm only asking because I know you've been around doing this for some time. Do you just have can you give us a broad-based overview of what the taxes have been historically and the last time that the state legislature adjusted the fuel tax?
Ms. Legursky?
Mr. Chairman and Representative McGuire, the last time the state of Wyoming adjusted the fuel tax was in 2013. And at that time, it went from 14 cents to 24 cents with the addition that Senator Landon referred to earlier, that amount of money, that 10-cent increase in the fuel tax went directly on the roads. Traditionally in the past, prior to that, fuel tax could be spent on administration cost or the administrating of getting that money on the roads. It could also go to support the highway patrol as well, because they administer our traffic laws within those highways. So in 2013, when we passed the 10 cents, I believe we came back the following year and adjusted that. So that amount of money went directly to the roads for construction and maintenance and could not be spent at that time with the administration cost, including the highway patrol, that it went strictly to the roads. So 2013 was the last time we saw an increase in the state fuel tax.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that, Mr. Chairman, is why I held that question to ask Ms. Legursky. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Legursky.
Thank you.
I forgot to recognize you, Representative Sweeney. I apologize. You snuck in and,
Who is that behind that, Matt?
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pat Sweeney, House District 58. I just also would like to follow up and add my support. Last year in this past, not special session, but the general session, Revenue Committee had put forth a proposal also. I think this has better traction doing it this way. Representative Helen Ann, that's on our committee, had put forward basically trying to keep up with inflation. I don't know if this will do it with the way things are going right now, unfortunately, but very supportive of the 2 cents and the way it's directed. And for those that were in the legislature, as Senator Landon, appreciate the support back then and the push, which was very controversial, as I remember. And but I think the time is now. The funds are needed, obviously, and this your proposed amendment that you'll be working, I certainly can support. And we just need to have the debate on the floor, and would appreciate everybody's support on this one. Thank you.
Okay. Questions for Representative Sweeney? Mr. Co-Chair, Representative, please come back.
Mr. Chairman.
You don't escape that easy.
Well, Representative, this isn't so much a question, but it's kind of putting in with you. That was a difficult vote, and it's always a difficult vote. It was a really big lift back in 2013. All that did was put us up in the neighborhood of surrounding states, by the way. I have never regretted that vote. I think it was one of the most important things we've ever done. And honestly, it's interesting to me that we are only now, today, getting back to the cost per gallon of gas that it was that day that we passed the bill. It was $3.40 that day, and it was never that high again. And it's climbing up there, we're just about back to where it was before we passed that increase. So, you know, thank goodness we did it because we've been able to fix some of the roads out there with all of that. So thank you for that, Representative. Appreciate your support on it.
Thank you. Any other public comment from people in the room? Okay. Heather, do we have anyone in the virtual land who wish to speak?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we do have Mark Larson, and he's
Okay,
been
if
admitted.
you would let Mark in, please. Mr. Larson, proceed.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mark Larson with the Wyoming Petroleum Marketers Association. Let me begin by stating that our support for the Obermuller bill that was passed yesterday. The concept of leveraging severance taxes to the benefit of YDOT and community colleges is big picture thinking and maximizes the productive use of those funds. This new revenue should be supplement to the fuel tax, not a supplant of the fuel tax, and that includes the FMR, in our opinion. Chairman and committee, the committee heard a myriad of issues that I think I heard many times the critical mass term put into place. And this morning I was a little bit, I did not know the discussion was going on relative to the 2 cents for 3 years. Petroleum marketers discussed the bill and are of the opinion, from what we're hearing in the testimony too over the last yesterday and today, is that a 5 cent increase will get us close to parity with the surrounding states without exceeding some of those states that have gone way over the 30 cent level. But it would also allow, that 5 cents will also allow the match to be maximized with the ITCHA match revenue coming forward. So I would pose to the committee that the 5 cents is necessary to get to the match that YDOT is going to need in order to create those different grants and programs that we're having in the future. So I hope the committee will discuss that. Petroleum Marketers supports a 5 cent increase, but 1 year. Historically, the petroleum marketers have rejected legislatures making tax commitments for future legislatures. If there's a need for that tax increase in a future year, then those bodies at that time can pose their own bills and pass their own bills. Relative to the chairman's comments about the value of 2013, that was amazing. It was critical and necessary. It did get us up to parity with some of the other states at that time. Since that time, some of the other states have increased in their tax, but Nebraska has not. They are still at 28.6 fuel tax, and Colorado is at 22 on gasoline and 20.5 on diesel. So as petroleum marketers, we're sensitive to what the competitive environment is with an awful lot of the fuel that is sold coming into our state, coming from Nebraska and Colorado. We do think that 29 cents is doable. We think that that would be necessary to maximize on the match that YDOT is looking forward to. And we did have a small discussion, but I left it up to you all as policymakers, whether or not it should be earmarked only for roads, with some of the operational discussions that you've heard relative to salaries at State Patrol and so on. We think that needs to have further inspection. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we do support up to 5 cents in 1 year. Let's get it done. Let's make sure we have the match available for the ITCHA matches that are coming forward, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Larson? Senator Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, I think, as I understand it, Mr. Larson is saying just raise it 5 cents and stop there. Is that correct, Mr. Larson?
Mr. Larson?
Mr. Chairman, yes, Senator Anderson, that is correct. Let's bite the bullet. Let's make sure that we maximize on the ITCHA matches that are available to YDOT. And my discussions with YDOT were that it will get us close. It's still not going to maximize, get us over the limit, but 5 cents will definitely make up the biggest bulk of the match necessary to maximize on IDCHIP.
Other questions for Mr. Larson? Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Thank you, committee.
Heather, anyone else virtual? Okay. Anyone else in the room? With that, I'll close public testimony on the bill. Committee? Moved by McGuire.
Second,
Seconded by Anderson.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Anderson.
as I understand it right now, it's as proposed with the 5 cents in every 3 years. Is that correct? Or are you saying that we've changed it to 2 cents before we proposed it?
Senator, I would suggest we change it to 2 cents per year over 3 years. We haven't, it's still a draft. We can do whatever we want with it.
Yeah.
I know that's a little confusing, and then conform the rest of the calculations for snowmobiles and off-road vehicles. So that's,
Or we can leave it like it is, right?
or you can leave it like it is if
Yeah.
you prefer. This is a discussion and of what we will consider. Well, yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Okay, other discussion on the bill? Any other discussion? Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I thank you for that clarification. I think the chairman is just suggesting that we may want to consider dropping that to a 2 cent times 3 year situation in the bill. And we can talk about that when that amendment is proposed. But committee, I appreciate the work we did yesterday, and I would hope that that the committee support this bill. I think it's another opportunity to at least forward a policy discussion to our colleagues in the legislature. And I don't have to say how important it is, Mr. Chairman. We went over that yesterday. I think it's absolutely critical that we provide a remedy to the problem. The problem is, how are we going to match this federal money? Well, this is a way you could do it. And if the other bill is not met with approval, then we at least have this one to fall back on and discuss it when the time comes. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anyone else? Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the former speakers, and well, I'm not sure quite how to say this without stepping on somebody's toes, but I know the state still has a strong reliance, if you will, on the energy sector. And there's a lot of folks who have their business model related to vehicles that consume our fuel. And we have an endorsement from one of them here today. So I kind of like the idea, and I hope the committee will consider this, to designate it for only ridges and roads, and for the purposes that the former speaker just mentioned, to make sure that this doesn't get I mean, I'm not saying with intention to do that, but miss the opportunity, misallocate, miss the opportunity. So I'm going to be thinking of a motion to amend it for that designated purpose.
Other comments? Clarification for the committee so that you can put this in your head when you do the figuring. For each 1 cent change in fuel tax is about worth about $4.2 million. So if we're wondering what it does, that's the change in income if you increase it. For every penny, it's about 4.2 million. I'd also say that when the fuel tax was raised in 2013, it was raised 10 cents a gallon, effective since then, all at once. And UW did a study on that and calculated that at the pump, that 10-cent tax increase was about 0.9 cents at the pump. It wasn't even a penny going up at the pump. And it has to do with the way fuels are marketed in a region and the other states' taxes, and it's a complicated formula. I don't feel qualified to explain it. I've tried to understand it several times, but it's we're part of a regional area when it comes to fuels and taxes and that sort of thing. As was alluded to by Mr. Larson, you also have the International Fuel Tax Assessment, those IFTA stickers you see on trucks, that is a calculation of levelizing the taxes between various states. So if a truck travels from Nebraska through Wyoming to Utah to Nevada and on to California and buys fuel in those different states, there's a calculation to in effect levelize the tax payments so that in effect the states all get their fair share. Sometimes they get a credit, sometimes they get a debit. Levelizing. So other discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator McGuire. Oh, I'll get to you next, or in a minute, Representative Baker. Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And on the same line of that conversation, so that same study also pointed out that other states surrounding us, they have other mechanisms, particularly a state income tax, that they funnel money into their highway roads and things. We don't. So it's a little bit of a apples and oranges comparison when you compare surrounding fuel taxes, because we're solely fuel tax. Some of our surrounding states tax their population in other manners and then funnel that money into the highways. So that was part of that same study you just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And part of that is, if you notice, the fuel taxes in Colorado are less than Wyoming, but if you go there and buy fuel, it's more expensive, and they supplement their road and that with all their general fund money. Yeah, other sources. Senator Anderson. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator, could you hold just a minute? Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say that I'm going to oppose this bill for the simple reason that I think it unfairly puts a burden on passenger vehicles. I believe that, the discussion should revolve around access versus damage. And to me, the damage is being done by the commercial vehicles. So the burden should be placed on them to go ahead and pay for and address the issue. So I'm going to oppose the bill just because I don't think that I could successfully run an amendment to strip out the gasoline portion. But that's why. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative, you do understand that this also includes diesel fuel and those alternative fuels.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. My point being that I feel like the diesel fuel portion absolutely should be increased, because I think those are the consumers and those are the vehicles that are doing the damage to the roads. Whether it's 300 to 1 or 4,000 to 1, whatever that number is, clearly the passenger vehicles are not responsible for the majority of damage done to our roads.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Representative. Senator Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see the truckers aren't here today maybe, but I think the truckers pay other taxes, not just fuel taxes, to repair the roads. I think if you follow one, a lot of them have that written right on the back of their truck, how much they're paying to maintain the highways. Anyway, my constituents, and in the discussion with many of them about the RUC that we're talking about, I believe that's a correct road user charge. Is that correct name? The RUC, they didn't like that. And they came up with the raise the fuel taxes in a stair step. I didn't come up with it. And every one of them said that would be okay. And when I asked how much that was, I started at 10 cents. They immediately started at 5. And so I pursued that with 3 steps of 5 cents each, and they were completely all right with that. I did that at various encounters with the constituents in my area, and consistently, that's what they wanted to do. And even if I said that the fuel taxes were going down, because in some of them even were electric car drivers, they all were in favor of raising fuel taxes, and none of them dropped to 2 cents. I would suggest that it's going to be difficult to get this through, just like it was in 2013. Whether it's 5 cents or 2 cents, the no new taxes guys are going to vote against it, period. They don't care. So we might as well go for what makes a difference to the highway department in getting this done. And the 5 cents maybe will bring us up to parity, but we need a lot more than that. And I want to stay with the 5 cents over 3 steps and fight it out right off the bat. I think we could do the 2 cents and get it in, like you say, but we'll have to change it to 5 cents at some point in time to make any difference. 1 million, 4.2 million, I don't think makes that much difference on our highways. We'll need 5 times that. So I'm all for this bill and all for the 5 cents. Thank you.
Other comments? All right,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the senator's comments. I think it's important for us to remember that you get to go to the well about once a decade. That's kind of the history of things, and it is a fight, and it should be a fight. None of us run for office with the idea of raising taxes. But over the course of the last day and a half, I think we really hopefully hit home with the fact that we've got an infrastructure that is running up to the edge of the cliff, folks. And we have to do something. If we keep it at the levels that the senator is suggesting, there's your match. That's the match that allows you to take that federal money and maximize it. The 2 cents is going to be just as big a fight, and it's not going to get us where we need to go. So that's just some additional thoughts to what the senator is pointing out.
Other comments? All right. So with that, we'll work the bill. Page 1. Page 2. Representative Henderson.
Mr. Chairman, as I said, I want to keep the discussion alive, and I guess it's a question really, do we need to change or update as we did before to designate the money that comes from this to the purpose of, roads and bridges? And if not, then my motion to make that conceptual adjustment to the language for this increase would be moot. So.
Representative, I think the bill already does that. It starts at the bottom of page 5.
Okay.
It goes over and says, shall only be expended in highway construction, repair and maintenance, and not for administration or operating expenses.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just if I may explain a little bit, I too have been talking with constituents, particularly in the energy sector and businesses. Most of them are small businesses, as well as constituents who go back and forth to work like you and I do. And they're concerned about the cost of living. And so I think we're all aware of that, but for the good reasons that the senator, the good co-chairman mentioned in terms of having this go forward, keep the discussion alive, I support the bill, but we don't need this. So I don't have a motion to make.
Okay, thank you. Okay, page 3. And I will defer to Senator Anderson's statement that we are back to considering this as a 5, 5, and 5 cent bill. Just for everybody's clarification, sorry for the confusion. So everything that is in the bill stays as the draft is right now. That's what we're working on. Okay, page 4. Page 5. Page 6. 7. 8. 9. And 10.
Mr. Chairman, just a final.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your thoughts this morning and how you've been working on this for a while as well. Just a final thought. This has a long ways to go. And I think we all know it. I think there's something like 27 steps that it has to clear from this point forward. So, the 5 cents, the 2 cents, we're going to wrestle with that as we go forward. And I hope that we can send the bill forward just so that we have this arrow in the quiver. This doesn't, if we support it today, that doesn't mean we're going to support it on third reading. We all have to make that decision when the time comes. So, Mr. Chairman, I think the bill's ready for a vote.
So are you calling the question?
Yes.
Okay, question being called. Heather, would you take roll?
This is a roll call vote for 22 LSO 0032 version 4 fuel tax. Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Furphy.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
No.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Baker.
No.
Representative Brown.
Excused,
Representative Burt.
excused,
Representative Henderson.
Aye.
Representative McGuire. Representative Obermuller.
I believe he has left the proxy.
Mr. Chairman, he has, and his vote is aye.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Stivar.
Excused,
Co-Chairman Burkhart.
aye.
Co-Chairman Landon.
Aye.
That passes.
Thank you. And because it is a revenue bill, it is a House bill. Okay, with that, we're now up to where we should have been at 8 o'clock. So we're
Mr. Chairman,
only,
did you direct that at me?
no. No, we are only 2 hours behind. So you're burning lunch right now. I had a good breakfast. I can last till dinner, so think about that. Let's take a 10-minute break. Be back at 10:15, please.
Chairman, I brought some donuts for you.
Thank you.
I know you needed them.
I do.
I like the 50.
There are still a lot of microphones on.
For those of you who've never been to JC, they'll take a 10-minute break the last 45 minutes. So let's see. So next up, we have, hey, it's 8 o'clock. 8:15. Vehicles equipped with automated driving systems. We do have a bill draft. Heather, automated driving systems? Committee, you were handed this morning, I think, 1, 2, 3 bill drafts, and we will be working off of these new ones you were handed this morning, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Mr.
It's
Chairman.
version
Oh,
0.6.
yes.
Heather, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, this is, I'm going over 22 LSO-0099, working draft 0.6. And this is the bill draft, vehicles equipped with automated driving systems. This bill draft is going to lay out some of the regulation for vehicles equipped with an automated driving system. And so rather than preempt each thing as we go through, I'm jumping right into the definitions will help make the most sense. So at the bottom of page 1, it described that 31-21-101 through 109 are going to be created in this bill. So Title 31, again, is the transportation statutes. And then in Chapter 21 is creating a new chapter for autonomous motor vehicles. And then an Article 1, so the 101 through 109. And I'm at the top of page 2, which is vehicles equipped with an automated driving system. So the definitions, and luckily it starts with an A, so right off the bat, we'll know what we're talking about with an automated driving system, or ADS. It means the hardware and software that are collectively capable of performing the entire dynamic driving task. That's another definition that we'll come up with in a little bit, on a sustained basis, regardless of whether the system is limited to a specific operational design domain. And ADS is used specifically to describe a level 3, 4, or 5 driving automation system, as the standards of driving automation are defined in this thing called SAE J3016 standard. And that standard is also, we'll look at what that is. It's just that way there can be some standardization when you're looking at what these types of vehicles are. An ADS equipped vehicle shall not include a motor vehicle that is equipped with systems that enhance safety or provide the human driver assistance, such as collision avoidance systems, which are not capable.
Heather, let me interrupt you for a moment.
Yes.
On quoting the SAE standard, do we need to put the date of that standard? Because most of those would be like SAE J3016 dash date. And the reason I ask that is we have an Attorney General opinion from several years ago that says we need to specify the date if they have them, that they are not permanent, and we cannot commit a future legislature to a date. You can't say as amended because, or as revised, you have to specify the specific date. So do we need to do that here?
Mr. Chairman, on page 4, it's just because it begins with the S and we're only at the A's and the definitions. And on page 4, you'll see paragraph 8 is the definition of SAE J3016. And so it specifically means the taxonomy and definitions for terms related to driving automated systems for on-road motor vehicles, published by the Society of Automotive Engineers International in June 2018. So the answer to your question is yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I'm just behind the curve a little bit here.
That's okay. It's the alphabet. And we weren't there yet. So.
Senator Pappas.
So that begs the question, if if these standards get updated, our statutes don't, correct? And so would it be logical that we just say current version?
Mr. Chairman, Chairman,
Jarvis.
Senator Pappas, that is the challenge that Chairman Burkhart was describing. And that there are places in statutes that has been said that such and such as amended, but that can sometimes then be not giving the right legislative guidance to a particular item, and it can be a delegation of authority that is not that is without actual guidelines and or sideboards, if you will, because if you say as amended, then and you know we're into the 12th edition 20 years from now, it may not be what you folks having put in this 2018 version really actually meant. So I believe I can't quote the attorney general version that the representative described or the chairman described, but the idea is that you're supposed to put the specific one. Ideally, you would put the specific one rather than as amended because it leaves it so open-ended.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator,
my
follow up.
concern though is with these particular vehicles, I'm assuming that there's going to be a lot of safety standards in there, and as the technology changes, the manufacturers of these vehicles are going to be meeting these standards. And so if we're not that nimble in changing, our statutes to allow for the change in the federal law, or not federal law, but these standards, which I'm assuming all the manufacturers are going to be meeting, then some of these vehicles then may not be eligible to be on our road because we have an older standard. That's my only question in my mind.
Senator, maybe I can address this a little bit too, because I kind of ran headlong into this whole issue several years ago. And the opinion is, and it was confirmed by LSO also, is that we cannot commit the state to something that we don't know of. And for example, and wild and crazy example, all of a sudden there is a new standard that says all vehicles have to have 5 wheels. And we've just said, whatever the racing is, then all of a sudden, all the vehicles in Wyoming end up being out of compliance. Now, that's an extreme example, but the example is that we cannot commit to an unknown future of a standard, and the standards, I agree, they change every single year. A lot of them do. The automotive standards, the National Electric Code mandatory changes every 3 years, and we have to go back and change the statutes to use the most current version, but we can't commit to a future version that we don't know what is in it. It's a tough situation. I agree with you. I'd like to just say we're most current, but you can't. In fact, even the federal government for a long time, it was in statute that they didn't change in federal law that they were to use the 1968 National Electric Code. In the 80s, that was still in there. And I had to admit, I was one of the few people that kept a copy of the 68 code, so I knew what was in there. And if you didn't meet the 68 code, even though you had better materials, you were out of compliance. Now, the federal government has since changed that, but again, you're right. We are not that nimble, but that's the situation we're in. You bet. Continue, Mr. Jarvis.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, then, so there's the definition of an automated driving system and specifying that it's not an automated a vehicle equipped with an automated driving system is not some of these things that just help us so we don't run into the car in front of us as we're driving our own vehicle. That's the tail end of that definition. And then at the top of page 3, commercial vehicle, it refers to the definition that is at 31-18-101. That's the very beginning of the commercial vehicle statutes. And that does say unless specified otherwise, because there will be a point that comes back into play about what a commercial vehicle is. Department means Department of Transportation. And then a dispatching entity. You'll hear that term during this. Dispatching entity means a human who dispatches an ADS equipped vehicle in driverless operation. Okay, the dynamic driving task, you'll recall that as part of the ADS definition, it said that it's all of the software and hardware collectively that are capable of performing the entire dynamic driving task. That means that that's all of the real-time operational and tactical functions that are required to operate a motor vehicle in on-road traffic, and including specific functions identified in department rules. So this gives some flexibility to the department as it's developing rules, and some of as also Senator Pappas is concerned with technology progressing, so that there's some flexibility there with the rules development. And excluding strategic functions such as trip scheduling or scheduling of destinations and waypoints. A human driver means a natural person in the vehicle with a valid class of license for the type of vehicle being operated, who controls all or part of the dynamic task. So that's someone who's actually in a vehicle, which would not necessarily apply to one equipped with an ADS. At the top of page 4 is to specify what operate or operation means in these instances, which are the activities that are collectively performed by a human driver with or without the support from an ADS system. And the in an ADS under that SAE J3016 automation level 1 or 2. It means operate, or by a dispatching entity. Operate means to operate a car by a dispatching entity with an ADS to perform the dynamic driving task. So operate can be either by a human or by the ADS when it's referred to. So after those definitions, going into 31-21-102, this discusses this is regulation of the operation of a vehicle that's equipped with an automated driving system and safety at railroad crossings. So this specifies that a vehicle equipped with an ADS may be operated on the highways of the state as long as it's registered according to what's in this draft or in this bill. And that also the dispatching entity or human driver, if that's applicable, causes that vehicle to comply with the traffic laws. So now we're at the top of page 5. So, the vehicle has to comply with the rules of the road. And then paragraph 3, and this also can operate on the roads of the state, as long as that while in driverless operation, the ADS equipped vehicle is capable of operating in compliance with the safety laws. So the traffic laws, the safety laws. So then one of these vehicles can operate on the highways of the state. Also, it can operate on the highways of the state if it has to be in compliance with all applicable safety standards, equipment requirements, and performance requirements of state and federal law, unless there's some sort of a waiver that has been granted by the regulating agency. And that allows for, again, some changes in technology as things progress and develop. Paragraph 5, the additional thing that must be provided, a vehicle equipped with an ADS must have to operate on the highways of this state, is that it has to be in compliance with all federal motor vehicle safety standards for the vehicle's model year, or has the United States Department of Transportation or other relevant federal agency approved exemption from specific compliance. So it needs to follow the laws and be safe and have the safety equipment and laws. That's the rule of 1. And then subsection B is that the Department of Transportation may impose by a rule any additional requirements necessary to ensure the safe operation of these vehicles on our roads. And then there is one of these inclusion paragraphs. It's not exclusionary, so it certainly can be more than this, but at the top of page 6, some of these additional requirements that the department may impose, they may include rules for safely crossing railroad grade crossings. This is something that, for example, was in last year's bill regarding this railroad crossings. And so that when promulgating rules about railroad crossings, they should have diagnostic on-site tests, is what that describes. And then the subsection C, the department may by rule require notice from any entity demonstrating or testing new technology or operating conditions of a vehicle equipped with an ADS in the state. The information required as part of the notification process may be established by rule of the department. There was a lot of discussion last year, the committee may recall, about testing new technology on the state and what is required. And this is a version of that it kind of allows the entity doing the testing to work with the department so that there's adequate notice and safety while also being able to test new stuff, especially on Wyoming's roads that allow for conditions testing that is not elsewhere. The bottom of page 6, 31-21-103. These are the requirements of the dispatching entities and human drivers. So the first requirement is that a dispatching entity that is operating a vehicle equipped with an ADS shall have a valid class of license for the type of motor vehicle being operated. And then the subsection B is that, just to clarify, that nothing in this article prohibits or restricts a human driver from operating a vehicle equipped with an ADS that allows the human driver to control all or part of the dynamic driving task, as long as that human driver holds the right class for the type of vehicle that's being operated. Then middle of page 7, there's 31-21-104. This is signage required for commercial vehicles and registration and title of vehicles equipped with the automated driving system, insurance and reporting. So subsection A describes that a commercial vehicle that is equipped with an ADS needs to be marked so that folks know that it's a self-driving vehicle, that it's marked on the front and the back and each side with appropriate signage, and that the markings shall include conspicuous contact information that tell who the dispatching entity is. Subsection B indicates that a vehicle, so this is not any vehicle, commercial or otherwise, that is equipped with an ADS shall be properly registered under the state's registration statutes. Subsection C indicates that the vehicle equipped.
Question
Yes.
for Heather. Back on page 7 at the bottom of line 20, where the conspicuous contact information is written, you mentioned that it identifies the I guess the vendor or whoever owns that equipment, but that really doesn't say that. I mean, it could be a phone number for all I know. Are we intending to mark these vehicles with a name of the organization that is the entity running it?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jarvis?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, what is here is it needs to be identified that it's a vehicle equipped with an ADS, and how to contact the dispatching entity is currently. If the committee wants additional information, it could specify here, because you're right, it is, there's not a list of everything that does need to be included, but at a minimum, there would need to be contact information to reach the dispatching entity. So.
Mr. Chairman, follow up?
Follow up, please.
To me, it doesn't even say, I mean, it says right here, conspicuous contact information. That could be just a phone number or an email address, to me, by the language there. Doesn't even say that this is an ADS system. Doesn't say who is running it. It could be just a phone number on the side of a truck. I think we need to be a little more specific. Okay.
Jarvis, and I think I see an amendment coming.
Okay.
This goes through.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jarvis.
Senator Pappas, if there are certain items that the committee would want to be there, and bearing in mind that there are also federal requirements for what a commercial vehicle needs to be marked with as well. So there would be additional markings just purely by virtue of being a commercial vehicle, as far as a DOT number and items like that. However, the committee would be able to specify things as well, if it would want them to be clear. On page 8, so a vehicle equipped with an ADS needs to be registered and titled like any other vehicle in the state. And then on subsection D, on middle of page 8, at the time of registration and annual renewal of registration for a vehicle equipped with an ADS, any update, the vehicle needs to update its contact information, basically. So when a vehicle is being registered and when it's being renewed, they need to make sure that with the county treasurer in the county where the vehicle is registered, that they have updated contact information for reaching the dispatching entity. This is all to try to get at the idea of what Senator Pappas was, that to actually be able to reach the right person. And then also, they need to prove, a person needs to verify that the vehicle is covered with an aggregate amount of $5 million of insurance for liability as well. So those two things will need to be proved at the time of upping the registration, well, initial registration as well as renewing it. And then also at the top of page 9, verification of uninsured motorist coverage. And then the additional thing that is required at each annual registration is that for commercial vehicles, an annual year-end report for the previous year needs to be submitted that tells about the number of miles operated, the safety issues encountered, any collisions, the amount of damages caused to any person or property, and any injury to any human that required medical attention, and any striking of a big game animal. So a commercial vehicle also with its annual registration needs to report some of those statistics about the vehicle.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious why we decided you have to have $5 million worth of liability insurance. And maybe I'm not understanding it, but I don't carry $5 million worth of liability insurance on any of my personal or commercial vehicles now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Jarvis, Representative McGuire, either of you?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
Please.
there are two responses. One is that this may be, well, the registration and titling and annual renewal, those things were intended to, I believe, apply to any vehicle because they need to be registered and titled. Correct? But some clarification on the that insurance requirement, because any vehicle would also have to have insurance just according to the regular law. I believe that the $5 million insurance may be that it needs to be for a commercial vehicle. And so that may need to be specified in that particular paragraph, or maybe even for all throughout. But as far as the 5 million amount, that is something that is developed as the committee has discussed this. And different folks have communicated with it.
Follow up, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, in my business, we have trucks, 2 of them that are commercially insured. One of them's at $1 million and one of them's at 1.5. So we've almost gone 5 times the amount, which is gonna cost everybody 5 times the premiums. I'm thinking $5 million might be a bit excessive. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
One moment, Senator. I don't want to speak for good Senator McEwen, but I think his question kind of is where did 5 million come from? What was the basis of that number? Oh, okay, Senator Pappas.
That's what I was trying to get at. Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
This is a vestige left over from the last bill. If you recall the bill we had the last time, there was $5 million in it, but it was for a company only that was providing the vehicles to test in our state. And it wasn't a policy per vehicle. Okay, it was for the company that wanted to come in and test their vehicles in the state. So I think that's where the 5 million came from, and it's just left over. I agree with the good senator from Campbell County that 5 million is way too much to ask every commercial vehicle to have here. So we need to have insurance, but we need to get to a reasonable amount. Thank you.
I'm sensing another amendment. Ms. Jarvis, proceed. Ms. Jarvis?
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So the next statute, so that's what was required for a vehicle to be titled, registered, and for commercial vehicles to have some additional things. They need to do the reports and have the signage. And it may be, it sounds like it probably is at the bottom of page 8 that that there would need to be for a commercial vehicle at the beginning of that paragraph 2, similar to at the beginning of paragraph 4 on page 9 for a commercial vehicle, if the committee wants to specify some amount for commercial vehicles to hold. There would need to be some amount for just all regular vehicles to hold as well. So it may be that there would need to be 2 paragraphs, that commercial vehicles would have some amount and other vehicles would have an amount as per, so maybe referring to another statute that passenger vehicles have, for example, if the committee wants them to be separate between the commercial and the other vehicles for insurance requirements. Page 9, 31-21-105. These are, now this section is specific to commercial vehicles throughout. This is requirements for commercial vehicles that are equipped with automated driving systems and a prohibition of double, triple trailers and oversized or overweight loads. So in subsection A, this is saying, in addition to all the other requirements that are in this article, a commercial vehicle that's equipped with an ADS needs to have a commercial permit that is specific to commercial vehicles equipped with an ADS, and any mandated inspections or certificates for commercial vehicles according to rules and fees set by the department. So this allows for some of that flexibility for change, as the committee was describing or wondering with technology as it changes. To recover, there can be a fee for this particular permit to recover a proportionate share of the department's infrastructure and administrative expenses that are incurred as they need to start regulating this new type of vehicle. And there is the provision on the end of this fee page, or on this subsection, that says that once established, through this bill, the department may annually adjust the fees authorized under this paragraph not to exceed the percentage increase in the Wyoming Cost of Living Index as determined by the Economic Analysis Division, unless authorized by the legislature. So once the legislature sets it, then they can incrementally increase it if need be. Paragraph 2 of an additional thing that commercial vehicle needs to do is they need to obtain an annual public safety communication system authorization and connection. And also together with the payment of the 10,000 annual fee that will allow a Wyoming peace officer or public safety dispatch or the department to communicate directly with the dispatching entity of one of these vehicles, or the human driver if that's applicable, and to that will allow that vehicle to be given real-time commands. The connection information may be coded so that only law enforcement, public safety dispatch, or the department may contact the dispatching entity. It doesn't have to be that anyone could contact them, but that's a safety matter for these self-driving vehicles. And
I'm sorry, Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand this. So if I own one of these automatic driving systems, I have to pay $10,000 so that everybody can communicate with it? Is that what this is saying? Mr.
Mr.
Chairman?
Jarvis.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McEwen, if it's a commercial vehicle, and we'll get to, it's a specific type of commercial vehicle in this section. But yes, if it's a commercial vehicle of a specific type, it needs to have a permit like that was in subsection A and in subsection A, paragraph 1, and it would need to have this a WireLink connection so that the vehicle can be communicated with to get some real-time commands if need be. Typically, like for example, in an emergency situation. And it would be so that law enforcement or public safety dispatch or the department would be able to contact the dispatching entity of the vehicle.
Senator Pappas.
So my question is, the department would be communicating directly with this vehicle through WireLink or other department-approved communication method?
Ms. Jarvis?
This vehicle is automated, right? There's nothing in it. There's potentially not a driver in it. And so is the communication with the driving entity for the entity, dispatching entity, or is the communication directly with the vehicle? Because I can't see the department trying to interfere in the operation of a vehicle. I think that liability would really be bad for the state. So please explain that to me. And $10,000, what is this fee going to cover?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Senator Pappas, on page 10, lines 18, 19, 20, it's so that the peace officer, safety dispatch, or the department can communicate directly with the dispatching entity or the human driver if applicable. They're not going to somehow get in there and hijack this, the system or computer that's controlling the vehicle. They're going to contact with the dispatching entity or the human driver. But I think that Representative McGuire has additional light to shed on this.
So follow up though.
Please.
Would that mean that all these commercial vehicles would have to have WireLink radios in their vehicles?
Ms. Jarvis?
Do you want part of that? Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, this provision, as I understand the intent of it to be, there would be some means of connection to WireLink, some way so that those entities, the department, a dispatcher or law enforcement could communicate with the dispatching entity or the human driver. So there's going to be some connection. I don't know if it would be radios or or the technology at the time. I don't know specifically what it would be.
Follow up again. Well, I can see a dispatching entity. They're probably offsite. They're in a command center somewhere dispatching the trucks. I mean, they could just pick up the phone and call them, I would imagine. But if there's a human driver, because it also allows for contact to the human driver, I think you would have to have that equipment in every vehicle, if I'm not mistaken.
Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the question becomes, and we're all familiar with this, the road is closed outside of Medicine Bow. And so there are trucks and cars lined up all the way through town. And they're sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the trooper opens the road. And so everybody starts moving, and there's a Class 8 truck that's parked on the highway, right in the middle of everything, not moving. Nobody inside of it. It's dark. How does that local deputy or sheriff or highway patrolman, what does he do? So the intent of this is that whoever that operator is will have a connection through WireLink. And that's why we have WireLink as a statewide emergency communication system. So that deputy can get on WireLink and contact the dispatcher and say, I've got this truck, DOT number XYZ. The Wyoming-based dispatcher is able to contact whoever is owning or operating that truck. And this is probably a good time to talk about dispatching entity. What is the dispatching entity? Is it somebody in Bangladesh who speaks English? It may be a secretary who punches a button that says, start this truck moving, and goes home. Because these are autonomous vehicles. They don't have to be connected necessarily to a dispatching center or anything else. It may just be operating on its very own. And it gets to Medicine Bow, the road is closed, shuts itself down, and maybe it doesn't have a software program that says, hey, wake up when somebody knocks on the door. So then what do? You got a 80,000-pound truck sitting in the middle of the highway, and you've got a deputy that wants to move it. And what does he do? That's the question.
Senator McCune.
Mr. Chairman, I feel like we're heading down a path of huge government overreach into private industry. I think it's private industry's job to make sure that truck moves. I think it's their job to make sure they're paying attention to it. If Billy Bob stops his truck and decides to walk over to Bud's bar and he's in the bar when the road gets open, the deputy still has the same problem. Or I'll say cafe. But at the end of the day, we're treating these vehicles like they're special, and it's just a different driving system. We could have the exact same problems with the current commercial vehicles we have now. So I think we're entering an area we may not want to go down, legislating private business practices. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Chairman?
Let's, Senator Pappas.
I'm still having, I'm sorry, but I'm still having a little heartburn over this, because, you know, this paragraph allows direct communication. It wasn't, I heard a little bit something different from the good representative in that the sheriff would contact the dispatch center directly. And I don't know if you meant his dispatch center, and the sheriff dispatch center would contact the dispatching entity. That then would take WildLink out of the dispatching entity's realm. But this says that public safety dispatcher department to communicate directly with the dispatching entity. So if you're telling me that sheriff on the road that night is going to call directly to a dispatching entity, there may be eventually thousands of dispatching entities out there. How would he know which one to call if he doesn't go through his dispatching center? I think there's a problem with the way this is worded and structured. I think, I don't know. You guys see the same thing? But
Well, Senator, we can debate this bill as we thought. I'd like to get through the bill, but I'll let Ms. Jarvis or Representative McGuire answer that question.
Okay,
And
thank
then
you.
let's get through the bill and then we can have this discussion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, that is the intent. Absolutely, is so that law enforcement through WildLink, that's why we have WildLink, so that if you're out of cell service, you can still contact the WildLink dispatcher. Contact the dispatch, our Wyoming-based WildLink law enforcement dispatcher. And that dispatcher has the ability, just as you said, to contact XYZ Corporation in Bangladesh or whomever and tell them, hey, you need to wake up truck number XYZ and move it or do something or get it going again. That's what the intent of this language is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Ms. Jarvis, please continue. We still have a number of pages to go. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. So there is this way of contacting the dispatching entity or the human driver, if applicable, to that was in paragraph 2. And then on page 11, subsection B, there is the requirement of a dispatching entity again, we're in this, this is for a commercial vehicle, shall comply with all licensing, training for hazardous materials, hours of service, drug testing, communication, and other requirements that a Wyoming-based commercial vehicle driver is required to comply with for operation in this state. So although it was said that a dispatching entity could be anywhere, the dispatching entity does have to have the valid class of license for the vehicle that is required. That was back on the page 7. And then also the dispatching entity needs to comply with other commercial vehicle requirements. And then subsection C, no commercial vehicle equipped with an ADS in any combination of 2 or more single vehicles or trailers, and no oversized or overweight vehicles equipped with an ADS shall operate on the highways of this state. So that's limiting the size of these ADS vehicles. And this particular section, commercial vehicle, means as is defined in 31-18-201A7. And so this definition here that I'm referring to the staff comment is to specify that the commercial vehicles in this particular section that are being required to obtain the special permit and to have the WildLink and to comply with all these commercial driver requirements are they are the type of vehicles that are specifically vehicles with a power unit having 2 axles and a gross vehicle weight or registered gross vehicle weight exceeding 26,000 pounds, or a power unit having 3 or more axles regardless of weight, or is a vehicle that's used in combination when the weight of such combination exceeds 26,000 pounds of gross vehicle weight. So this is, in other words, this particular section and all these requirements is not for a commercial vehicle that's, say, a bus. Well, I actually don't know my axles well. I should claim that there. So if a bus doesn't have these axle requirements, then, for example, it would not be one that needs to have this WildLink connection and the hours of service and the hazardous materials training and all that. So that's the difference between commercial vehicle in this particular section and commercial vehicle throughout this article. So there's that was just that staff comment and clarification. Okay, so at the top of page 12, these are duties after crashes that involve a vehicle equipped with an automated driving system. And so if there's a crash with one of these, then a vehicle equipped with an ADS shall remain on the scene when another vehicle that would get into a crash is required to. The dispatching entity, human driver if applicable, or the ADS if the vehicle has the capability, needs to alert law enforcement to the crash, to the fact that it's happened. And the dispatching entity or human driver, if applicable, shall provide all requested operating data from before and during the accident to Wyoming law enforcement and any victim or victim's representative. If the dispatching entity or human driver wishes, or if applicable, wishes to protect proprietary data, then the dispatching entity or human driver may request that it is protected through a court. And then in the middle or top of 31-21-107, rulemaking. As was recognized, a lot of this is quick changing technology or requirements. And so this allows for, consistent with this article, as long as it doesn't go against this article and any applicable federal state laws, the Department of Transportation shall promulgate rules and develop any forms that are necessary to implement the article. So that allows some of the things, some of the details that are not filled in here to allow for flexibility, that they would fill in with their rules. And for registration, subsection B talks about that for registration of a vehicle equipped with an ADS, in addition to the fees, the department may assess an additional fee to recover the proportionate share of the amount that is required, that the department has to kind of gear up to start regulating this new type of vehicle. And that the department can adjust that accordingly, according to the cost. Once it's established under this bill draft, it can adjust that according to Wyoming Cost of Living Index. And that any funds that the department receives through that fee shall be deposited into the state highway fund. Penalties in 31-21-108. A person who violates a provision of all of these things that we've been reading, or a rule of the department that is promulgated pursuant to this article is guilty of a misdemeanor and subject to a fine of not more than $750 for the first occurrence and not more than $1,000 per day for subsequent offense. And then an annual report. The department needs to submit an annual report each year, not later than October 1st, to this committee, containing information about commercial vehicles that it has obtained. Remember, the commercial vehicles, when they renew their registration each year, they have to submit a report of some of the details that had happened that year. So they so the department's report to this committee needs to include a summary of ADS vehicle operations in Wyoming, the total number of ADS vehicles that are registered and commercial vehicles registered, the miles driven for the commercial vehicles, collision statistics, and a brief description of all moving violations or things that have been issued. Also recommend the department, if it has recommendations for safety related legislation or legislation concerning other parts of the ADS vehicles and other data that seems necessary to submit in their report. Then, not later than September of next year is when the department needs to have promulgated some rules to administer this act. And then finally, at the bottom of page 16 is the split effective date, just to say that the rulemaking part of this bill draft shall go into effect so the department can get busy making rules before all the statutes that are in section 1 take effect.
Any other questions? Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just make a couple of broad-based statements or observations. First, I'd like to thank the Legislative Service Office for tackling this really very large and complicated subject and doing, in my opinion, a great job of it. And hopefully, this proposed bill is just a framework, and that's what it's meant to be, as a framework, a place to start the discussion, because we, as 90 members, should set the policy. And in my opinion, that's what we need to work on, is the policy, because quite frankly, autonomous vehicles are here. They're being tested all over the country right now. They're probably being tested in Wyoming. We just don't know about it because we don't have a requirement that a manufacturer notify us that they're being tested here. So that's what this is this is a framework to get that started. And ultimately, and this is simply my opinion, ultimately, this technology will come at us in a cascade. It's not going to come at us incrementally. It's going to come at us so fast that really the proper entity to regulate this and to keep the highways safe is the department. And that's why you saw in here a lot of references to rulemaking, because I don't think that we're quick enough or nimble enough to keep up with this technology as it changes. So that would be my opinion, is that a lot of this should go to the department in the form of rulemaking, and things will change. But again, our duty is to set the policy, and first and foremost, that policy should be keeping the citizens of the state of Wyoming safe. And when there is an accident, and there will be, statistically, there will be accidents. When there are accidents, making sure that those citizens have fair access to the data and have access to sufficient insurance to make themselves whole. Because this is, with all due respect, this is very different than the truck that my dad used to have, that I used to drive. These are autonomous vehicles. And I'm just going to talk again about dispatching entity. That's going to be a term that, you know, really and truly needs to be defined by the department, because it's going to change very quickly. Initially, there will be control centers, but it will get to the point where, just like you can with a car that you can buy right now in the US, You can go out, hit your smartphone, and you can get it to back up and come around and pick you up in front of the grocery store. You can self-dispatch it. You can program it to be dispatched to pick you up at a certain time. So who's dispatching it at that time? So all these things are going to change very, very quickly. And I would just invite you to think again, or to consider. So the entities that are creating this technology, it's not the nutty professor in his garage who's making flubber or something like that. These are gigantic multinational companies who are investing billions of dollars to make this work. And once they do make it work, I would invite you to just consider, are they going to come here and are they going to sell these vehicles in onesies and twosies so that you can, put them to work for you? Or using the model of the great big box stores that came into Wyoming several years ago, are they going to keep that technology to themselves? And are they going to go out and are they going to compete with our local businesses? And if you look through that window right there, you'll see a gigantic plant that processes bentonite. And every day there's a parade of trucks that come down from KC down I-25. And that is the perfect opportunity for a company with autonomous vehicles to come in and underbid the companies that are currently doing that, because they can run those trucks 24/7. Doesn't care if it's Super Bowl Sunday or Christmas Day, that truck can just keep on rolling. And they can do that today. They've got the technology. So I think one of the policies should be giving our Wyoming operators an equal footing with those companies. I think that's a valid policy consideration. Our current operators have to go out and they have to get CDL operators, current physicals, they have to have sufficient insurance. And they're out there struggling every day. And again, I would look at the business model of the big box stores. I can remember my mom taking me to the city council meeting in this city when our first big box store was coming. And the representative of that big box store said, don't worry, it won't affect your downtown businesses. And there will be more jobs once we come to town, and they will be higher paying jobs. I still remember that very vividly. And we all know what happened there. I would just invite you to think about who's going to create this technology and how ultimately it is going to affect our state. With regard to the SAE standards, yep, they are going to change. And I would invite, again, going back to the combined wisdom of 90 individuals, I would invite some kind of language that, again, YDOT would have the opportunity to change those through rule and reg, because what's valid today is not going to be valid tomorrow. And with regard to commercial entities, yes, the majority of this bill is aimed at commercial entities. And when I talk about the insurance requirement on page 7, starting at page 7, I look at the title of that particular new statute, which says for commercial vehicles. And in my mind, it all applies to commercial vehicles. But if we need to change that, that's all good. I mean, that's why we have the collective wisdom of the group. And to me, there's a huge difference between buying a car for grandma so that she can take herself to the grocery store and a Class 8 vehicle at 80,000 pounds barreling down the interstate at 80 miles an hour. Those are two very different things, but it all falls under the same issue of this new technology that's coming, and it's going to come very fast. Those were my comments. Thank you, Mr. Ritter.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And, up front, I wanted to thank you, Representative, for playing point guard on this and keeping this bill on the front burner a little bit. If not on the front burner, at least on the stove. This is a big lift. And listening today, I'm sitting here knowing that we have some concerns from our trucking industry with regard to interstate commerce and proper wording so that these trucks can go across state lines, et cetera, et cetera. We've gotten feedback that maybe that insurance piece needs another look. I guess my question to you, Representative, is this ready? I mean, can we lift this bill and take it to the session and be ready with it? In your mind, is this framework ready to put in place? And can we get it done? Can we get the lift done?
Representative McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that we can. And I think that it is imperative to listen to all the parties involved, the trucking association, operators, YDOT especially. And I would much rather have a pared down, using the term pared as in a paring knife, pared down, bare bones bill that again gives a lot of deference to YDOT in the beginning. Now, 5 years from now, if people say, hey, we really need to make some changes or whatever, that's what we do. And we can come in and change it. But I think it would be detrimental to the state and to the citizens to do nothing and not have anything out there. And I think probably one of the most important things is giving YDOT the ability to say, we at least need to know who's out there operating and how many miles and what's going on when you're operating. And I'll just add one more thing and going to the good senator who brought this up. I think it's imperative for our law enforcement, whether or not it just be at the beginning, but our law enforcement needs the ability to contact whoever's running that truck. And, somebody told me one time as we were discussing this, using my Medicine Bow example, well, they can just have it towed. Well, you don't just tow an 80,000 pound truck. You have to at least disconnect the driveline. Are you going to crawl under that truck that's dark and sitting there with your wrench to disconnect the driveline? And you have no idea who's operating that truck. It may start up and start moving at any given moment. And, it's 20 below zero, blowing 40. You can't hear a thing and you're going to crawl under that truck to disconnect the driveline? I don't think so. Law enforcement, in my opinion, probably the second most important thing of this bill, law enforcement needs to have the ability to contact someone, hopefully who speaks English, who can control that truck, even if it's to tell them, don't start that truck up because we've got a tow operator under there disconnecting the driveline because I'm going to have your truck towed. Even if it's that simple. But to me, that is a true safety item. And that's a totally different deal than having in my opinion, a CDL professional who may be in the cafe. I mean, I can go find that guy if I need to. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up and a comment. Appreciate that, Representative. Thank you. And I can't disagree with anything you've said. I just know that we're coming up on a budget session, 2/3 votes. The debate already this morning, it's a lift. That's all I'm saying. And legitimate, if we don't take this forward, we're going to deal with it until we get it right. That's for sure. But anyway, appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
Senator Pappas.
I'm 100% behind this bill. I really think that we need to address ADS systems in our state. I mean, it's the future. It's coming, whether we like it or not. And our trucking industry here in Wyoming has to address that as well. There's nothing that's saying that they won't be purchasing these systems as well. And I'm assuming that would happen in the future. But I do think that it's imperative to get it in front of the body, even if it doesn't pass this time because of the 2/3 vote, at least it'll be visible for when it does come up again. I do think, however, that there's some disincentives in here. The $5 million insurance policy, it's like we're disincentivizing ADS systems. I think it ought to be more like $1 million, like a normal operator would pay. And I didn't get my answer to the question I had about the $10,000 fee. I don't understand why there's a 10,000. That seems like a pretty big disincentive for every vehicle. We're talking about each vehicle, correct? To have a $10,000 fee. And if we're imposing a fee, typically a fee is used to offset some kind of an expense. So what are we offsetting? What do we need $10,000 for? Seems like a high fee unless we're asking for something or we're going to be performing some kind of service.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Senator Pappas, the $10,000 to have some definitely workable WildLink or other thing approved by the department, the way of contacting the dispatching entity or human driver was an amount that was given to me, but I don't know that it was, I don't know where exactly the actual amount came from, but I imagine that that may be an area that the department might have some additional numbers on. It did not come from the department, just to be clear. It just, but it was given to me as to put in there. And maybe, I don't know for certain the rationale of having that amount, but maybe that was as a talking point. I don't know. But it was given to me, but not something that I think is solid as it must be number.
Follow up? Because there's a permit as well. You know, in Romanet 1, there's a permit, commercial permit required. And then in Romanet 2, there's this fee. So I don't understand. And so I don't know. I'd like to know what the fee is for. Because I'm assuming all the communications equipment and the dispatch centers and all of that's going to be necessary for someone in the field to talk to the dispatching entity. I don't think the fee has anything to do with any of that stuff, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I just would like to know where the 10,000 came from and why.
Representative Guar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the intent is per operator, and it is a user fee. And that is whether it be through telecommunications or whatever, we, the citizens of the state of Wyoming, have propped up the WildLink system. And it's a system that is different if you're operating in a urban state where you have cell service all over. That's very different. If you're operating here in Wyoming, where we have vast areas where we have no cell service, the only thing that law enforcement has is WildLink. And that's why we invested in WildLink. We continue to invest in WildLink. So again, using the collective wisdom of the group, if that's too much, then it's too much. But it's a user fee. It's per operator. It's because these vehicles will be operating in the state and taking advantage of the infrastructure that we have built and paid for. And so it's a fee for that infrastructure. Thank you, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Please.
And maybe that's my confusion, because if I look on page 9, line 19, it says a commercial vehicle equipped with ADS shall. And so shall pay an annual fee. So that's a vehicle, not an operator. Unless, I know our definition on page 3 of commercial vehicle means what's defined as those Wyoming statutes, unless those Wyoming statutes are defining an operator. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman,
But
Senator Pappas, if the intent is to be the operator, whether the dispatching entity, whether the dispatching entity is dispatching 1 or 100. That is not what this currently says. If that is what the intent is. This currently says that each vehicle would need to have that. And so I'm not by any means arguing or professing to know the intent of Representative McGuire, but it is currently per vehicle, not per dispatching entity. In the words here, but the words can change depending on if that's what the committee wants.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, that's all I'm getting at. Each vehicle is a big disincentive for every vehicle to come up with $10,000. And I understand your thinking. If it's operator, I'm good with that. So, and it wouldn't be the dispatching entity. The dispatching entity is not necessarily the owner operator. So maybe some more changes have to be in here. So, okay, thank you.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to thank you both, as well as all those folks who've helped, get us to this point. I know, recalling last time we brought this up in committee, there's a number of folks who've been participating in this for a few years now. So my question, Mr. Chairman, please, is where would this, how would this compare if you've had time? Maybe I'd wait for public comment, but how does it compare with states adjacent to us that are also going to be facing the reality of autonomous vehicles?
Ms. Jarvis, Representative McGuire, either?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can only offer you some anecdotal data. And that is, there are a lot of states that are waiting to see what the federal government does. And that is just exactly what's happening. Everybody's waiting for the federal government. Federal government has not released a definitive set of regulations yet. So I would like to think that we're a little bit ahead of some of our neighboring states. But right now, there is no guidance out there and there's no universal set of rules. And I would just, again, go back towards, I think that's another points again towards giving YDOT a lot of rulemaking leeway. Because when the federal rules do come out, obviously we don't want to be in conflict with federal rules. And so we want to have them have the flexibility to roll back or roll forward changes as things change. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Okay, not seeing any. I'll open it for public comment for those in the room. Director, you look excited.
Excited, maybe not the right term, Mr. Chairman, but.
All right, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So maybe a couple comments. One, again, thank you to the preparers of these bills. There's a lot of work that goes into this. Just as a way of background, my understanding from working on last year is a lot of legislative interest in what's going on our roads pertaining to automated vehicles and safety. And so within the next couple months, you will see signs at every entrance to this state that says, if you're in an automated vehicle or testing one, pull in the next port of entry or call 511 for a couple of reasons. One is I think we need to know who's on the road. Two is I want to remind them all, but the Wyoming regulations currently say in statutes, it says, hey buddy, make sure you got somebody behind the wheel. And we want to know what's going on so that we can actually accurately report to you what we have on the road. So that's that. So I'm fairly comfortable as a person that you made responsible for our transportation system here in this state. I think we need to get a handle on what's going on out there with automated vehicles. So that is coming.
Director, if I could interrupt you at that point. Would those signs, that requirement apply to all vehicles?
Mr. Chairman, as is currently written, it applies to all vehicles.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that some companies are advertising on television even, that, you know, they have a type of automated system and you can sit behind the wheel and read a book or whatever, and the vehicle will drive itself. So I just want to make sure those vehicles are also required to stop.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you know, when you talk about, you know, the complexities of level 3, 4, and 5. So the intent for this would be probably level 5, and it would not be your Tesla that's already licensed on the road.
Okay,
So.
all right. I just wanted to be clear.
Sure. So that,
Okay.
but so that's a valid question. So in terms of definition, it'd probably be a level 5 type vehicle. Well, it can drive itself. So I'll verify that, Mr. Chairman.
Just a thought, Director,
is-
those are within, that requirement, I believe, is within your purview as a department. So please continue with your statement. I
Absolutely. So I
apologize.
just share with the committee about just trying to get situational awareness of what's going on the roads.
Right.
So that we know, and then can really take some appropriate action. And it may save us, it may make the bill less expensive in terms of going there. The other, just a couple comments generally across the board. Addressing level 3, 4, and 5 in one bill is complex. And I think there's a couple variations in here that we need to make because of that. I do like YDOT being allowed or required to do rules and regs, because this will be a fast moving train when it comes. And I do appreciate the preparer's concept of let's make this a framework. That being said, just a couple specific recommendations about the bill. One is the first one would be on page 7, line 1, 2, and 3, which says that a dispatching entity operating a vehicle equipped with an ADS shall have a valid class of license. I do think that I would ask, my understanding was that the intent was for a commercial vehicle, because what we've all talked about here is that one of the benefits of this is you can buy it for grandma when you pull her driver's license and she can go to the store. And I think she will not have a valid driver's license. But one of the beautiful things about this is that, you know, in this world of trying to create equity and give people, you know, advantages, I think we want as a society unlicensed people to be able to have a class 5 to be able to have an autonomous vehicle and to use it. It also, you know, if you go to, if Mr. Billy Bob goes to the first establishment you indicated, Senator, the bar, and you've had a little bit too much to drink, you could actually probably take your autonomous vehicle home. And if there's no way to control it, you cannot get a DUI, correct? So I would recommend that we modify line 1, 2, and 3 to say that it's not a requirement to have a valid class of license. And if you want to do that just for personal vehicles, that's fine, and leave it commercial. I think that's a policy decision. But I think we lose the advantage of a class 5 vehicle there.
Mr. Chair.
Senator McCune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe this is just to lighten things up a bit. Will the open container laws in the class 5 vehicles change? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director.
Mr. Chairman and Senator, you know, I see that as a policy decision, but actually, I think maybe they would have to. So at least take a look at it. Absolutely. So
What, Senator Pappas?
Yeah, so on your proposed change to that first paragraph on page 7 about the valid license, wouldn't we still want to require a valid license for everything except a level 5 vehicle?
Director?
Because of
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, you could phrase it that way, but I think a policy decision that you would need to consider is, do you want a valid commercial drive, if you're dispatching a Class 8 vehicle, do you want the dispatching entity to have a valid permit? I'm not sure you need it, you know, but I can see, you know, I can see the argument. If you're running hazmat, I'm probably not too concerned about it, but I can see the policy discussion of understanding what's on the road and the ability to control it.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, building on your point about the distinction of commercial vehicle, do you feel that this would provide a basic framework that could be adaptable to those types of automated vehicles that would be used primarily for transport, you know, like the, I think we can say company names, no?
Just continue.
Uber-Lyft, right? You know, we have those on the horizon, close to reality, some testing going on.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative
Director.
Henderson, I do see those type of networked vehicles coming and them being ADS and being able to operate. I mean, if I was an Uber driver, I'd do it because it makes perfect sense to me. And I see it coming. Maybe going back to your question, maybe relating back to what Senator Papa said, is you could take section 1, 2, and 3, and you could say YDOT will establish or create rules and regulations pertaining to the licensing requirements of the dispatching entity, and just leave it at that, instead of trying to dictate all of this in a bill when the vehicles really aren't even here yet. Might be an option.
Senator Pappas.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the dispatching entity is really broad in here. And when it comes to a commercial vehicle, yes, it's probably someone working for a company that's actually running a dispatch center, dispatching vehicles. But this bill is not only for commercial vehicles. This bill could be for, you know, my grandmother who wants her vehicle, right? Her level 5 car, and she calls it up and take me to the store. She's the dispatching entity at that time, right? So we can't say that she has to have a driver's license. She wouldn't be able to use the reason why she's got that vehicle is because she can't hold a driver's license.
Yeah.
So I think we need some changes. I think it's a good starting point, but dispatching entity is way too broad here, and it probably needs to maybe even define the rules and regulations.
Just for the committee, with this discussion, I saw a report that it was a survey of people, I believe 65 and older. 70% of them said they want autonomous vehicles. One of the hardest things to do is give up that driver's license. If you ever had to do it with an elderly relative, you know the difficulty. That takes away their freedom. And they want to still have that freedom to go to the store when they want, and autonomous vehicles will probably give it to them. All they have to do is tell it, take me to the supermarket. Takes them there, wait for me, and take me home. Kind of simplistic, but that's what they really want, and it keeps them at that level of freedom. So I'm sorry, Director, please continue with your
Mr. Chairman,
comments.
thank you. I think that's enough on that paragraph. I do absolutely concur with the discussion on insurance. 5 million is too much. The Senator Pappas talked about where that came from. And originally it was testing, and it was a requirement of the OEM of the manufacturer to do that. And so I think would recommend that be adjusted. On page 9, line 5 through 11. That's the way I read this is a reporting requirement for a commercial vehicle, and it's underneath the paragraph D as in Delta, which is what must be submitted to the county treasurer in the county in which that vehicle is registered. I don't think the county treasurers are interested in the annual report of what the commercial vehicle is doing, and would just recommend that you delete it because you do require an annual report from YDOT to this body, which I think makes a lot of sense. And you do that at the end on page 15. And so it seems duplicitous to me, and I'm not sure what the county would do with that.
Director, where are you in the bill, please?
On page 9,
Okay,
line 5 through 11.
okay, thank
So
you.
that's Bowlegs 1V4. So, which is, if you go up to paragraph D as in Delta, that it really says what must be submitted to the county treasurer. And so I'm not sure, I see Ms. Jarvis is joining me, so she might have some comment.
Ms. Jarvis?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not trying to take over your testimony. I just know if you were, the intent, I believe, is, see, this information, the department wouldn't have this information if the commercial vehicles don't report it. So the idea is the one time that the commercial vehicles are kind of needing to check in with the state, if you will, is when they are renewing their registration each year. And so at that time, they would then submit this report. And rather than saying, oh, you need to go here and go to the treasurer and do this, you're going to need to go to the department and do this, it was anticipated, I believe, anticipated that they would renew their registration, submit their report, and then the county, when they transmit other information, would transmit it over to YDOT so that YDOT could then make that report that is at the end. Because otherwise YDOT doesn't have the information to make the report because they haven't received it from these commercial entities. So it's not that, you're right. I believe that, I don't think there was any intent that the counties care or, would want to, it's just that that's less of a burden for that commercial vehicle. They're not having to go here to do this and here to do this and here to do this and here to do this. It's just, they have to renew their registration. So give your report here. And then in theory, it would be through a wonderful TIS system, actually transmitted to you.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Heather. That makes sense to me. I might suggest then on line 7, submitted to the department, sort of threw me off there. And the other, I think, discussion perhaps with the Wyoming Trucking Association would be, the IRP process is out there that gathers lots of data from trucks. And so there'd be almost, I think the reporting mechanism and timing would be up discussion.
Director, would you clarify what IRP is, please?
Yes, it's the mechanism that's currently in place where we get a monthly report from all commercial vehicles that travel the road, that basically report mileage, and that's how we adjust the fuel tax.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator.
An option would be to change Romanet 4 to paragraph E and just have it reported directly to the department. I don't think probably the counties, it's just additional work for them. Collect the information and transmit it on. I'm sure they would do it. There's nothing in here that forces them to do it, but I'm sure they would do it, but it's just additional work. And if these commercial vehicles are already sending stuff to the department,
Senator, I'm detecting another amendment.
Okay.
Coming. Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman, moving on, I would also there's been a lot of discussion on page 10, the information about WyoLink. So I think in my mind, the policy issue is there must be a way to communicate with the vehicle in real time by the dispatching entity. That's how I articulated in my mind after listening to the discussion. It likely is not WyoLink, because WyoLink is a voice-to-voice, not digital transmission to a truck to control it. It's very different technologies. WyoLink would have to significantly change to do that. Now, WyoLink certainly is the way that somebody can start that process. And if the committee so chooses to use this as a WyoLink funding bill and make it $100 per truck, because we may have to use WyoLink to control it, that makes a lot of sense to me. And we are looking for ways to fund WyoLink. But I would just talk, what I focused in on her was other department approved method of communication. And in my mind, it's the ability to control the vehicle in real time by the dispatching entity. Mr. Chairman, that's probably a quick rundown of some of the bigger policy issues here. There's some other little stuff, but I think in the interest of time, I'll.
Director, thank you. Questions for the director? Questions? Thank you, Director. Other people in the room who would like to speak on the bill? Any other public comment in the room? Okay. Anyone in the virtual land?
Mr. Chairman, we have Mark Aronowitz and Jesse Kirchmeier.
If you would go ahead and admit them. Mr. Aronowitz, good to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I okay to proceed?
Please.
Okay, my name's Mark Aronowitz. I'm appearing before your committee today as a member of the Wyoming Trial Lawyers Association, and I'm the co-chair of our legislative committee along with Colin Simpson. And I will keep it brief because I know you folks are working hard and you're a bit behind. I will only talk about the $5 million insurance provision, and I will just share a little bit of knowledge with you on that issue, but we are supportive of that number, at least in the beginning, while this is brand new technology. I think comparing autonomous vehicles, regular commercial vehicles, is apples to oranges. A commercial driver with $1 million in coverage or 1.5 million is a trained professional with lots of experience in lots of different conditions. Here you're dealing with new, unproven technology, and I don't want to be morbid or scary about things, but I mean, do we know whether this technology can deal with random and unpredictable pedestrians like at Frontier Days or a UW football game that just finished, the Jackson Town Square in summer, a school bus with its stop sign out and a bunch of kids getting out, a school zone, you know, when school is starting or finishing and there's kids just everywhere doing unpredictable things. I can easily envision a worst case scenario where 5 million in damage occurs with an autonomous vehicle that's going fast and doesn't recognize what's going on and doesn't stop where a normal human driver might just, you know, realize that there's been an issue and stop. I don't necessarily think you would be doing any of these companies a favor by lowering the minimum insurance amount from 5 million to something less. If one of those catastrophic events I just lined out did happen, then, you know, someone would try to recover the $1 million in insurance money, and then that company might be on the hook, you know, with their personal assets for the additional damage that they caused. So it may help them on the premiums, but it won't help them on the liability or the damages if something terrible happens. What I would suggest is, since this is so new and unproven and relatively untested, and we don't know how it works in the real world across our state, to keep that amount, you know, at least for a few years. You can always come back to this bill, and if everything I just said, you know, doesn't come to pass, fine, you can change it to just regular commercial insurance. But as of today, it's not a regular commercial situation. It's much different, and we just know so little today. And that's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Aronowitz? Any questions? Senator McCune.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. If we do have a catastrophic event or a failure with the system itself, wouldn't that go back to the manufacturer, not necessarily the dispatching agent or the company that's using the vehicle? I mean, isn't there a reasonable expectation when we purchase anything that it's going to work to a certain level? And if it doesn't and it causes harm, the actual producer of the system's liable, not the user? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ronaway, you want to try that one?
Sure. And Mr. Chairman and Senator McEwen, that is a great question, and it's totally fact dependent on what happened and why it happened and how it happened. And if, you know, I hope it's okay to say a name, but if it's, Tesla says, do not operate this in high winds or, smoky conditions or a snowstorm, and the dispatcher did, then Tesla would say, this isn't our fault. We gave you warnings and we gave you directions and you dispatched the vehicle anyway. And Tesla would point the finger back at the dispatcher. So it would totally depend on what happened and why it happened and how it happened. And it could easily be a case against both the user and the manufacturer. But we can't know without the actual event happening and figuring out what the root cause was.
Please, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I understand the point being that if somebody uses an object outside its design and causes damage, they're liable. Be like me trying to gut a deer with a rifle instead of a knife. That would be dumb. And if I do that and somebody gets hurt or damaged, then liability comes back on me. So I really think the 5 million might be too much still, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from Mr. Aronowitz? Not seeing any. Mr. Aronowitz, thank you very much. Anyone else in
Thank you all.
virtual land? Okay, anyone else in the room? With that, I'll close public testimony. Committee? Okay. Moved by Pappas. Seconded by Anderson. Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'm really conflicted on today. We're running about 4 hours behind. We've got a big bill in front of us. Already on my emails, 3 different proposed amendments have rolled in on this one. I suspect there's going to be a lot more of them. I've heard from a couple of our friends in the information industry who oppose this bill, and I'm sure they're going to be rolling in with some more amendments. So my concern remains, and I'm looking at the representative, my concern remains as to whether or not we can get this bill done, committee. We've got 5 other bills to consider this afternoon minimum, 7 if we include a couple of informational bills. I'm just getting concerned about the clock. That's where I'm at, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Committee, Senator Pappas.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, certainly we could, there'd be plenty of time to work the bill in session in committee, assuming it gets the 2/3 for introduction. We don't have to take time to fix all the problems with it right now. I suggest we pass it on and see what happens to it without necessarily working I've got some heartburn with some of the things in here, but I frankly would like to take the time to work on and think about those anyhow. So let's not take the time, but I still think we ought to not kill it.
Committee?
So
Anyone else? Mr. Co-Chair.
I would just, I tell you what, I will offer to the committee, and I'm looking at my fellow senators here. We could sure take it on our side, see if we can't work this bill. I'm willing to lean into it a little bit and see if we can put some frosting on the cake. And if the committee decides to pass it forward, we could make that a Senate file and go to work on it.
All right, and I guess. Okay. Question being called. Heather, call the roll.
This is a roll call for 22 LSO 0099, version 6, vehicles equipped with automated driving systems. Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Furphy.
Aye.
Senator McEwen.
Aye.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Baker.
Aye.
Representative Brown.
Excused,
Representative Burt.
excused.
Representative Henderson. Representative McGuire. Representative Obermueller.
Mr. Chairman, I have Representative Obermuller's proxy on that. Would you like to know it?
Yes, please.
It's an aye.
Aye. Okay.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Excused?
Co-Chairman Burkhart,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Landon.
Aye.
That passes.
And that will be a Senate bill. I think it does need work. This is not a commitment to pass that bill, but it's a commitment to continue working on it and make some substantial changes, I think, that have been recommended throughout here. Senator McEwen, I'd really like your assistance with your other senators on that. You had enough questions and concerns. Your input would be great. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well stated.
With that, I think it's 5 to noon. We had an hour planned for lunch, so could we be back here by 1:45? Is that doable? You have roughly 50 minutes for lunch.
Run and get a snack and come back.
Okay, yeah, you're gonna do a fast food run and please come back. Yeah, we still have lots of work to do. Don't run away. So with that, we are recessed for lunch until